The gravestone stood silent beneath the falling snow. 3 years, 3 winters, 3,000 mornings James Mackenzie had watched the white blanket cover his wife's name from this exact window. The coffee in his weathered hands had gone cold again. He never noticed anymore. Cold coffee was just another small death in a life that had stopped counting them. December 22nd, 1883. Montana Territory. The kind of morning that could kill a man if he wasn't careful. 10 degrees below freezing and dropping. The kind of cold that turned breath to ice crystals and made metal burn like fire against bare skin. Behind him, the cabin creaked and settled. Old wood remembering younger days. The fire crackled low in the stone hearth he had built with his own hands that first brutal winter. Back when Catherine was alive. Back when building meant something more than just surviving until spring. Jim was 41 years old. 6 feet 2 inches of weathered bone and scarred muscle. His face had the hard angles of Montana granite, carved by wind and sun, and 3 years of grief that didn't soften with time. Just changed shape. Found new ways to ambush a man when he least expected it. The gray at his temples was new. The lines around his eyes were deeper. The calluses on his hands were thicker. Everything else felt hollow. He turned from the window. The floorboards groaned under his boots. Elk-hide leather, double-stitched, good for another 2 winters if he kept them oiled. A man learned to make things last out here. Had to. The nearest town was 8 miles through snow that could swallow a horse. His daughter sat at the kitchen table. Ruby, 9 years old with her mother's brown hair and his own blue eyes. Too serious for a child. Too quiet. She wore a flannel dress Catherine had sewn, mended so many times the original fabric was hard to find. But clean. Always clean. Jim made sure of that. Ruby was drawing, not with pencils they couldn't afford, with charcoal from the fire. On paper, Tom Bradley had traded for 2 days of fence work. The scratch of charcoal on paper was the only sound beyond the wind. Jim moved closer. Curiosity pulled him despite himself. 3 figures on the paper. A tall man with dark hair, wide shoulders. That was him. Ruby had captured something in the stance. The way he stood. Always ready, always watching. The way a soldier never quite stops being a soldier, even 20 years after the war. A small girl with braids, smiling. That was Ruby herself, or the Ruby she used to be before Catherine died, before the cabin got so quiet. And between them, a woman, tall and slender, long yellow hair falling past her shoulders, a gentle smile, kind eyes, not Catherine. Catherine had brown hair like Ruby, copper in the firelight. This woman was someone else entirely. Someone Ruby had imagined, or prayed for, or drawn from some hope Jim didn't know she still carried. His jaw tightened. He said nothing, just turned back to the window where the snow fell heavier now. The third chair at their table sat empty. Gathering dust. He had removed the cushion Catherine had sewn, couldn't bear to see it, the cheerful yellow fabric with the tiny flowers. She had hummed while she sewed it, some hymn he couldn't remember now. The memory was there, but the tune had faded. The chair remained, though, a hollow reminder of what they had lost. Better this way, he told himself. Safer. A man's heart could only break so many times before the pieces refused to fit back together. A man can carry his grief or let grief carry him. His father had said that. Summer of 1863, night before Gettysburg, sitting around a fire that seemed too small against the darkness coming. Either way, it rides along. Jim had watched his father die the next day. Took a minie ball through the throat. Died choking on his own blood in a wheat field that got trampled to mud. 20,000 men died in those 3 days. Jim survived. Learned to carry his grief in his rifle and keep moving forward because stopping meant dying. He carried it now. Every morning he rose before dawn, fed the 30 head of cattle he had left, chopped wood until his shoulders burned, fixed fence, mucked stalls, rode the property line. Physical labor kept the demons quiet, but evenings were harder. Evenings when Ruby needed stories he had forgotten how to tell, when the silence grew so thick it threatened to suffocate them both. When he stood at this window and watched snow cover Catherine's grave and wondered how many more winters he could do this. He glanced at Ruby's drawing again. The woman with yellow hair smiled back at him from the paper. warm, welcoming. The lamplight made the charcoal lines seem to move, made her seem almost real. His chest ached with something he refused to name. Papa? The word was soft as wind through pine trees. Jim set the coffee cup on the cast iron stove. Yes, little bird? The nickname came automatically. Catherine had called her that. Ruby Bird, their little songbird, back when she used to sing. Jim couldn't remember the last time he had heard his daughter sing. Do you think Mama can see the snow from heaven? The question hit like a fist to his sternum, knocked the air from his lungs. Jim gripped the edge of the stove. The metal was warm, real, something to anchor him when memory tried to drag him under. Catherine's last words rose unbidden. The fever had broken for an hour. False hope. He knew that now. But in that moment, holding her hand, feeling her fingers squeeze his, he had believed, let himself believe. Don't let your heart become my grave, James. Her voice was barely a whisper, lips cracked from fever, eyes bright with something beyond pain. Promise me. Live. Love. Let our girls see what love looks like. He had promised. What else could he do? She was dying. You made promises to the dying, but promises made in lamplight while death waited didn't translate to cold Montana mornings, didn't warm empty beds, didn't fill silent cabins. I expect she can, Jim managed. His voice came out rougher than he intended. She always loved the first real snow of Christmas. Ruby nodded, satisfied with the answer. She returned to her drawing, tongue pressed between her lips in concentration, adding detail to the yellow-haired woman, making her more real. Jim moved to the window again. Outside, beyond the fence line, beyond the grave, 3 riders appeared on the ridge, dark shapes against white snow. They sat their horses for a long moment, looking down at his property, then turned and disappeared into the tree line. His hand moved automatically to the Winchester rifle hanging above the door. Company out here meant trouble. Always had. The knocks shattered the morning stillness. Jim's hand froze on the coffee pot. For 3 heartbeats, he didn't breathe, didn't move, just listened. Visitors didn't come to his cabin. He had made certain of that over 3 years of careful distance. The town knew him as the widower who kept to himself, who came to church on Sunday and bought supplies on Saturday and spoke to no one unless spoken to first, who turned down every invitation to dinner, every church social, every well-meaning attempt by Marshall Wade to introduce him to a nice widow woman who could use some help. The knock came again, more urgent this time. Jim moved toward the door. His hand found the rifle, pulled it down, checked the load without thinking. 15 years since Appomattox, but a soldier's habits never died. Through the frosted glass, he could make out a figure. Small, female, alone. He opened the door to winter in a woman's desperation. Sarah Morgan stood on his porch. He recognized her from Sunday services. The young widow who had arrived in Pine Valley 6 months past. She clutched a worn carpet bag to her chest like armor. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. Snow dusted her shoulders and the brim of her bonnet. Her coat was too thin. Boston wool, maybe. Fine fabric, but meant for city winters. Not Montana, not this. She was shivering. Had been for a while, judging by the blue tinge to her lips. Mr. Mackenzie. Her voice trembled, but she kept her chin up, kept her dignity. I apologize for intruding. I wouldn't have come if I had anywhere else to go. Jim's grip tightened on the rifle. He lowered it slightly, kept it ready but not threatening. What happened? The boarding house. She swallowed hard, drew breath like it hurt. Mrs. Fletcher sold the building yesterday. The new owner wants us out by week's end. But She stopped, started again. I have nowhere to go, no money for train fare, no family. I heard you sometimes take in travelers passing through. I can pay, a little, and I'll only need a few days until I find proper lodging. Every instinct Jim possessed screamed at him to refuse. A widow under his roof, even temporarily, would set tongues wagging from here to Sunday. Margaret Dawson would hear of it within the hour. She had been trying to snare him for 2 years now. This would give her ammunition. More than that, he couldn't afford the complication. His life ran on careful routine now. Wake before dawn, work until exhausted, sleep. Keep Ruby fed and clothed and educated as best he could. Survive until surviving felt less like dying. That was the plan, the only plan. Adding another person, another need, another responsibility. That way led to caring, and caring led to loss. He had lost enough. Papa? Ruby appeared behind him, peering around his leg, her face lit with recognition. You're the lady from church, the one who smells like lavender and helped me find my hymnal when I dropped it. Sarah managed a weak smile despite her distress. I remember. You have a lovely singing voice. Jim felt something crack inside his chest. Ruby never sang anymore. He hadn't known she sang in church. How much of his daughter's life was he missing while he stood at windows staring at graves? Ruby tugged his sleeve with surprising urgency, small fingers digging into the wool of his shirt. Her face turned up to his, solemn, too old for 9 years. Papa, it's almost Christmas. We can't send her into the cold. Jim opened his mouth. To say what? That life wasn't fair? That they couldn't save everyone? That sometimes people had to solve their own problems? But Ruby's next words stopped him cold. Even the stable had room for Mary. Silence fell like the snow outside, heavy and complete. Catherine's daughter, speaking Catherine's kind of truth. The kind that cut through excuses and laid bare what was right regardless of what was easy. Jim looked at Sarah Morgan, really looked, past the tears and the desperation. Saw the wooden cross peeking from her carpet bag, worn smooth from handling, clearly cherished, held tight through hard times. Another soul carrying grief, wearing it close to the heart like a second skin that never quite fit right. He should turn her away, should protect his carefully constructed walls, should keep his world small and manageable and safe from further pain. Should. The barn has a room, he heard himself say. The words felt dragged from somewhere deep, somewhere he thought had gone numb 3 years ago. Small but warm enough. You can stay there until you find proper lodging. Relief flooded Sarah's face like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Her whole body sagged. She had been holding herself so tight, expecting rejection. Braced for it. Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie. The words came out shaky, raw. I promise I won't be any trouble. She stepped inside, past the threshold, into the warmth. Jim closed the door against the wind, leaned the rifle back against the wall. When trouble knocks, a wise man answers, his father's voice again, ghosting through memory. When he doesn't, trouble kicks the door down anyway. Sarah's whispered thank you carried weight beyond mere gratitude. It carried hope, the kind that hurt to hear because it reminded Jim what hope sounded like, what it felt like, back when he still had some. Jim nodded once, jaw tight, and stepped aside to let her pass. Ruby was already pulling on her coat, eager to help, to show their guests the barn room, to have someone new in their small world. Through the window, Jim caught movement again. The 3 riders were back, closer now. He could make out details. Clayton Harker on the big bay stallion, Buck Morrison on the roan, Jake Sullivan on the paint mare. They sat their horses at the property line, looking, watching. Then Harker tipped his hat in mocking salute, and they rode away into the white, a warning, or a promise, hard to say which. Jim felt ice settle in his gut, the kind that had nothing to do with Montana winter. He had let winter inside his walls, but winter wasn't the only thing trying to get in. The barn was solid, pine logs chinked with mud and moss. Jim had built it the first year, 1877, right after he bought the land, before Catherine joined him, before Ruby was born, back when Montana was still territory and a man could claim 320 acres if he had the spine to work it. The structure stood 30 yards from the main cabin, close enough to reach in a storm, far enough for privacy, 4 stalls for horses, storage for hay and tack, and in the back corner, past the grain bins, a small room that had started life as a tack room, but Jim had converted it when travelers occasionally needed shelter. The door was solid oak, a real door with iron hinges he had forged himself back when he did smithing work to earn extra money. The room beyond was 10 feet square, not large, but larger than it seemed at first glance. Jim had made it livable, took pride in that even if he never said so. A small pot-belly stove sat in the corner. Sheet metal vent piped into the main chimney from the barn's heating system. Not fancy, but functional. Kept the room above freezing, even on the coldest nights. A single bed frame with rope supports and a straw tick mattress. Catherine had sewn the coverlet. Blue gingham with white thread. Simple but clean. Pillows stuffed with goose down from birds they had raised and butchered. A small table, 2 feet square, scarred pine, and one chair to match. Both pieces Jim had built on winter evenings when his hands needed work and his mind needed silence. A narrow wardrobe against one wall, space for hanging clothes and storing personals, a wash basin on a stand, a pitcher for water, a mirror with only a small crack in one corner. One window, small but glazed with real glass, looked out over the back pasture, east-facing, would catch the sunrise. The floor was packed earth but covered with a rag rug Catherine had braided from old clothes. Bits of Ruby's baby dresses woven in with Jim's worn-out work shirts. Memory made textile. "It's not much," Jim said. His voice came out gruff, embarrassed. The room suddenly seemed small and rough, not fit for a woman who spoke with Boston vowels and carried herself like she knew what indoor plumbing felt like. Sarah set her carpet bag down on the bed. She looked around slowly. Her fingers traced the edge of the table, the back of the chair. She moved to the window, looked out at the snow-covered pasture, the dark line of pine forest beyond. When she turned back, her eyes were wet. "It's perfect," she said. Meant it. He could hear the truth in her voice. "Truly, it's more than I hoped for, more than I deserve." "Breakfast and dinner in the main house," Jim said. "Listing things, facts, easier than emotion. You can manage your own midday meal. There's a well 30 yards east. Water's cold but clean. Privy is between here and the house. Wood's stacked outside. Keep the stove going, but bank it at night. Fire in a barn can kill stock." He stopped, ran out of instructions, stood there awkward in the doorway while Sarah watched him with those blue eyes that seemed to see too much. "I'll let you settle in," he managed. Turned to go. "Mr. Mackenzie?" He paused, looked back. "Why there?" Sarah asked quietly. "Why help me? Most men would have turned me away." Jim was silent for a long moment. Outside, he could hear Ruby's boots crunching through snow, coming to the barn with her arms full of something, probably blankets. His daughter's heart was bigger than her small frame could contain. "Because my daughter reminded me," Jim finally said, "that even stables have room when hearts don't." He left before Sarah could respond, before she could see what those words cost him to speak. Outside the barn, Ruby appeared, just as he predicted, carrying a pile of quilts that nearly obscured her face. Her breath puffed white in the cold air. Her cheeks were red, but her eyes were bright. Brighter than Jim had seen them in months. "I thought Miss Sarah might need extra blankets," Ruby announced. "It's going to be very cold tonight." "That's thoughtful, little bird." Ruby beamed at the praise. She pushed past him into the barn, into the back room where Sarah waited. Jim watched from the doorway, watched his daughter drop the quilts on the bed, watched Sarah kneel down to Ruby's eye level, watched them talk in voices too quiet for him to hear. Then Ruby pulled out the drawing, the one with 3 figures. She held it up, pointed to each person in turn. Her small voice carried now. "This is Papa. This is me. And this," Ruby's finger touched the yellow-haired woman, "this is you." Sarah's hand trembled as she took the paper, studied it. Her other hand came up to cover her mouth. "When did you draw this?" Sarah asked. Her voice was shaky. "6 months ago," Ruby said simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "After I prayed for someone to help Papa smile again, I drew what I prayed for. And now you're here." From the doorway, Jim felt the air leave his lungs. 6 months ago, before Sarah arrived in Pine Valley, before the boarding house sale, before this morning's desperate knock on his door. Ruby had prayed, had drawn, had believed, had faith when her father had none left. Sarah pulled Ruby into a hug, held her tight. The drawing crumpled slightly between them, but neither seemed to notice. Over Ruby's shoulder, Sarah's eyes met Jim's. In that moment, something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, Two people who had lost everything, finding themselves standing in a barn on Christmas week with a child who still believed in answered prayers. Jim turned away, his throat too tight for words, his chest too full for breath. He walked back to the cabin through snow that was falling heavier now. Each step felt like walking away from something, or towards something. He couldn't tell which. Inside, the cabin felt different. Not warmer exactly, but less empty. The knowledge that another person was on his property, that Ruby was happy, that he had done something Catherine would have approved of. It didn't fill the void. Nothing would, but it made the void seem slightly less vast. He added wood to the fire, put coffee on to heat, stood at the window and watched his daughter run from the barn back to the house. Watched her stop halfway, spin in a circle with her arms out, catching snowflakes on her tongue, laughing. When was the last time he had heard Ruby laugh? Jim gripped the window frame, wood solid under his palms. Real, present, not memory. Through the falling snow he could see the barn, could see lamplight in the small window of Sarah's room, could imagine her unpacking her few belongings, hanging her spare dress in the wardrobe, setting her small wooden cross on the table where she could see it. A stranger, a widow, a woman alone in the world, just like him. The thought came unbidden and unwelcome. He pushed it away, turned from the window, busied himself with unnecessary tasks, checking the rifle, organizing tools that didn't need organizing. Anything to keep his hands occupied and his mind from wandering into territory he had marked forbidden. Ruby burst through the door in a swirl of snow and excitement. She stomped her boots clean, unwound her scarf with urgent fingers. "Papa, Miss Sarah showed me her cross. It was her grandmother's, from a place called Cork in Ireland, and she knows how to read Latin. And she said she'll teach me if it's all right with you." Jim turned from his busy work, looked at his daughter, really looked, at the light in her eye, the animation in her face, the way she stood straighter, spoke faster, seemed more alive than she had in years. One morning, one act of charity, and Ruby was transforming before his eyes. What had he been doing to her? Keeping her locked in grief because he couldn't find his way out? "That would be fine," he said quietly, "if Miss Sarah has the time and inclination." "She said she would be honored." Ruby was practically bouncing now. "And Papa, can we invite her to Christmas dinner? Please, it's only 2 days away. Nobody should eat Christmas dinner alone. Mama wouldn't want that." There it was. The truth Ruby knew but Jim had been avoiding. Catherine wouldn't want them living like this, wouldn't want this hollow existence. She had made him promise. Live, love. Let Ruby see what love looks like. He had been breaking that promise every day for 3 years. "I suppose one dinner wouldn't hurt," Jim heard himself say. Ruby's smile could have lit the whole Montana territory. She launched herself at him, small arms wrapping around his waist, squeezing tight. "Thank you, Papa. Thank you, thank you, thank you." He held her, breathed in the scent of snow and child and hope. His daughter, his reason for breathing, the only thing that had kept him from following Catherine into that grave. "You're a good girl, Ruby Bird," he said into her hair. "The best girl." She squeezed tighter, then pulled back, looked up at him with those serious blue eyes. "You're a good papa," she said, "even when you're sad." The words hit harder than any blow he had taken in the war, harder than any loss, because they came from love, from forgiveness he didn't deserve, from a child who saw her father's brokenness and loved him anyway. Jim knelt down, eye level with his daughter, cupped her face in his scarred hands. "I'm going to try to be less sad," he said. A promise. To her, to Catherine's memory, to himself. "I'm going to try to be the papa you deserve." Ruby smiled, soft and knowing. "Mama said you just needed time, that you loved so big it would take a while to figure out how to do it again." "She said that?" "The night before she died, when you were outside, she told me you would be very sad, but that underneath the shade was all the love, and someday you'd remember how to let it out." Jim pulled Ruby close again, buried his face in her hair so she wouldn't see the tears that finally came. After 3 years of frozen grief, something was thawing. It hurt, like frozen fingers coming back to life. like blood returning to numb limbs. But underneath the pain was something else, something that might eventually feel like healing. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. Ruby insisted on cleaning the cabin for company. Jim didn't have the heart to tell her it was already clean. He kept it that way. Order was control, control was survival, but he let her sweep anyway, let her arrange the 3 chairs around the table just so. Let her fold napkins Catherine had embroidered years ago. Let her be busy and hopeful and young. He went outside to work, needed his hands occupied, his mind quiet. The fence along the southern property line needed attention. 3 posts had come loose, frost heaved probably, the ground freezing and thawing, pushing things out of alignment. It happened every winter. Jim loaded tools into a sled, hitched it to Drummer, his big bay gelding, mounted up and rode south through snow that was now 8 inches deep and still falling. The work was hard, cold, exactly what he needed. He dug out the loose posts, examined the bases. 2 were rotted and needed replacing. The 3rd just needed to be tamped solid. He worked methodically. The way he did everything, 1 task at a time, 1 post at a time. Don't think ahead. Don't look back. Just focus on what's in front of you. It was how he had survived the war, how he survived losing Catherine, how he survived every day. But today his mind wandered despite his efforts. Sarah Morgan, he knew almost nothing about her. She was from Boston, a widow. Her husband had died in a logging accident 2 years past. She had come west looking for a fresh start. That was all the town gossips had managed to learn. She kept to herself, went to church, did sewing work for the general store, never complained, never asked for help. Until today. What had driven her to his door? Why not Marshall Wade, or Reverend Chen, or the Bradleys who had more space and a wife to provide proper chaperone? Why him? Even the stable had room for Mary. Ruby's words echoed in his head, innocent, biblical, devastating in their simplicity. Jim tamped earth around the final post, tested it, solid, good for another few years. He gathered his tools, loaded the sled, started back toward the barn. Halfway home, he saw them again. 3 riders, on the ridge to the east. Too far for details, but he knew who they were. Harker and his men, watching, always watching. Clayton Harker owned 2,000 acres, ran 300 head of cattle, had a contract to supply beef to the Army fort at Helena, made money from freight hauling and mining interests, was the richest man in the county, and he wanted more. Specifically, he wanted Jim's land, had been making offers for 2 years, each one more generous than the last. Each one refused. Jim wasn't selling. This was his land, his and Catherine's. Bought legal, worked honest, every fence post driven by his hands, every acre cleared with his sweat. This was where Catherine was buried, where Ruby was born, where memories lived in every corner. No amount of money could buy that. But men like Harker didn't understand no, didn't accept it. They found ways around it, under it, through it. Jim watched the riders for a long moment, then clicked his tongue. Drummer started forward. The sled runners hissed through fresh snow. He would deal with Harker when the time came. Had dealt with harder men in the war, men who wanted to kill him. Harker just wanted his land. Different kind of threat, but a threat nonetheless. Back at the barn, he unsaddled Drummer, rubbed the horse down, fed and watered all 4 animals, checked their hooves for ice, put out hay for the night. Sarah's lamp was lit in her room. He could see the warm glow through the small window, could hear faintly the sound of humming. A hymn, soft and sweet. The melody carried on wood smoke in winter air. Jim froze, his hands stilled on the barn door. That hymn, he knew that hymn. It was Catherine's favorite. Come thou fount of every blessing. She had hummed it while kneading bread, while hanging wash, while rocking Ruby to sleep. Always that hymn, her comfort, her prayer, her way of finding peace in hard times. Now Sarah was humming it, the same tune, the same cadence. In the room that used to be for storing saddles and now held a woman who had appeared on his doorstep on the anniversary week of Catherine's death. Coincidence. Nothing more. But Jim stood there in the cold for a long time, listening, remembering, feeling something shift inside his carefully constructed walls. Not breaking, not yet, but cracking, letting light in where there had been only darkness. He finally went to the cabin, stamped snow off his boots, hung his coat and hat, washed his hands in the basin. The water was cold, the soap rough, good honest sensations. Real, present. Ruby had set the table. 3 places, the good plates Catherine had brought from her mother's house in Ohio, white china with blue flowers. One was chipped. Jim remembered the day it happened. Ruby was 4, reaching for something, knocked the plate off the counter. Catherine had laughed, said it gave the plate character. He picked up the chipped plate, ran his thumb over the smooth break. A small thing, a nothing thing, but it brought Catherine rushing back. Her laugh, her voice, her presence so strong for a moment he almost turned expecting to see her. But there was only Ruby, setting out forks and knives, folding napkins with careful precision, trying so hard to make everything perfect for their guest. "It looks nice," Jim said. Ruby looked up, smiled. "Mama would be proud." "She would," Jim agreed, and meant it. The words felt strange in his mouth. Talking about Catherine to Ruby? He usually avoided it, too painful, but maybe avoiding it was worse. Maybe Ruby needed to hear her mother's name, needed to know it was all right to remember, to speak, to keep Catherine alive in the only way they could now. "Tell me something about Mama," Ruby said suddenly. "Something I might not remember. I was so little when—" She trailed off, couldn't say the word. Died. Such a small word for such a big loss. Jim sat down at the table, gestured for Ruby to join him. She climbed into the chair beside his, looked at him with those expectant eyes. "Your Mama," Jim began slowly, finding the words like picking his way across a frozen river, testing each step. "Your Mama loved the first snow. Every year, no matter how hard the winter before had been. When that first snow came, she would go outside. No coat, no hat, just stand there with her face turned up. Let the flakes land on her cheeks. She said it felt like angels kissing her. Ruby smiled. "I remember that, a little bit, like a dream." "She would have loved today," Jim continued, finding it easier now, like a muscle he hadn't used in years, slowly remembering how. "All this snow, she would have made snow angels with you, built a snowman, maybe started a snowball fight she knew she couldn't win." "Did you have snowball fights with her?" "Once." Jim felt his own lips curve slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "She ambushed me, coming back from the barn. Got me square in the back with a perfect throw. I chased her around the cabin 3 times. Finally caught her. We both fell in a snowdrift, laughed until we couldn't breathe." "That sounds nice." "It was nice. Your Mama made everything nice, even hard things, even sad things. She had this way of finding light when everything seemed dark." Ruby was quiet for a moment, then, "Do you think Miss Sarah is like that?" The question caught Jim off guard. "What do you mean?" "Finding light in dark things. She seems paranoid, but when she smiles, it's real, like there's still light inside even though bad things happened." Out of the mouths of babes, Catherine would have said that, would have marveled at their daughter's insight, her ability to see people, to understand without being told. "I think maybe she is," Jim admitted, "but we don't know her well enough yet to say for certain." "But we will," Ruby said with confidence. "Know her. She's going to stay for Christmas, and maybe longer, because she needs us, and—" Ruby paused, chose her words carefully. "And maybe we need her too." Jim didn't answer. Couldn't, because the truth of it sat heavy in his chest. They did need someone, not to replace Catherine. No one could do that, but to remind them that life continued, that joy was still possible, that love could happen more than once. But admitting need felt like betrayal, like giving up, like accepting Catherine was really gone and not just away somewhere, coming back. The knock on the door saved him from having to respond. Sarah stood on the threshold, changed into a different dress, simple blue cotton, clean but worn. Her yellow hair was braided and pinned up. Her face was scrubbed. She looked younger than she had this morning, less desperate, more herself. "I hope I'm not too early," she said. "Ruby said to come at 6. "You're right on time," Jim said, stepped aside to let her in. Sarah entered, looked around the cabin, took in the simple furnishings. The stone fireplace, the small kitchen, the loft where Ruby slept, the closed door to Jim's room. "You have a lovely home," she said. "It's plain," Jim replied, "but it keeps the weather out. The best homes aren't about fancy things. They're about the people in them." More wisdom Jim didn't want to hear because it reminded him how empty his home had felt before today. Ruby appeared from the kitchen area. "Miss Sarah, I'm so glad you came. Papa's going to make his special venison stew. It was Mama's favorite." Sarah's eyes went to Jim, a question in them. "Is this all right? Talking about your late wife? Am I intruding on sacred ground?" "It was her favorite," Jim confirmed. "She always said I made it better than she did," which wasn't true, but I let her believe it. He moved to the stove, started pulling out ingredients. Venison from the deer he had shot last month, potatoes from the root cellar, carrots, onions, the last of the preserved tomatoes. Dried herbs Catherine had grown and hung years ago. Still good, still flavorful, still hers in some small way. Ruby pulled Sarah toward the table, showed her the place settings, the napkins, the chipped plate. "That one's Mama's plate," Ruby explained. "Papa always uses that one. Says the chip gives it character." Sarah smiled, soft and understanding. "My grandmother had a teacup like that, cracked all the way down one side. She said it had earned its imperfections through years of use. That it made it more valuable, not less." "That's what Mama said." Ruby was delighted at the connection. "Papa, did you hear? Miss Sarah's grandmother said the same thing as Mama." Jim stirred the stew, didn't turn around, didn't trust his voice. Too many echoes, too many reminders, too much Catherine in this evening when he had worked so hard to keep her ghost at bay. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe keeping her ghost away was the problem. Maybe letting her in, letting Ruby talk about her, letting Sarah's presence remind him of what a home with a woman in it felt like, maybe that was the path forward. He didn't know, couldn't tell, was too tired of trying to figure it out. So he just cooked. Let Ruby talk. Let Sarah respond with warmth and interest. Let the cabin fill with voices and life and something that almost felt like hope. And when dinner was ready, when they sat down at the table, all three chairs finally occupied, Jim looked at the women in his home and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Not happiness, not yet, but the possibility of it. Distant, faint, like the first hint of dawn on the darkest night. It would have to be enough. For now, Christmas Eve morning broke clear and bitter cold. 20 below freezing, the kind of cold that made breath freeze in your lungs, that made metal burn through gloves, that could kill a careless man in under an hour. Jim was up before dawn, always was. The habit of 20 years. Soldier's time, farmer's time, time that didn't care if you were tired or shadow sad or broken. Time that just kept moving and expected you to move with it. He dressed in the dark, long underwear, wool pants, 2 shirts, his heaviest coat. The sheepskin one Catherine had saved 3 years to buy him. Back when they had dreams that included old age and grandchildren and dying in bed together after a life well lived. Dreams were dangerous things. They gave you something to lose. Outside, the stars were still visible. Hard white points in a black sky. No moon, just starlight reflecting off snow and making the world glow blue. Jim walked to the barn. His breath came in clouds. His boots squeaked on snow so cold it had turned to powder. The Winchester was a comfortable weight across his back. He never went anywhere without it. Not anymore. Inside the barn, the animals were restless. Sensing something, storm coming, maybe, or just the wrongness men like Harker left in the air. Animals knew, always knew before people did. He fed them, checked water, broke ice where it had formed overnight. The work was automatic. His hands knew what to do without his mind needing to direct them. Sarah's lamp was already lit. He could see the glow under her door, heard quiet movement, a woman's morning sounds. Different from the sounds of a man and child alone. Softer, more careful, like she was afraid of taking up too much space in the world. Jim filled the water trough, carried hay to each stall. When he finished, Sarah's door opened. She stepped out carrying the empty water pitcher. Startled when she saw him, hand going to her throat, then relaxing when she recognized him in the dim light. Mr. Mackenzie, I didn't mean to disturb you. You didn't. I'm always up early. As am I. She moved to the water barrel, started to lift the pitcher to fill it. Jim took it from her. Their fingers touched briefly. Both pulled back. The pitcher hung between them for a moment. Then Jim took it fully, filled it from the barrel, handed it back. Heavy, he said. I'll bring you a full one each morning. That's not necessary. I can manage. Didn't say you couldn't. Said I'd do it. Sarah studied him. Her blue eyes seemed to see more than he wanted seen. You're a kind man, Mr. Mackenzie. Your wife must have loved you very much. The words landed like rocks in still water, sending ripples through carefully maintained calm. She did, Jim said, voice rough. I loved her too. Still do. I know. Sarah's voice was gentle, understanding. I still love Robert, my husband. Some loves don't die when people do. They just change form. Jim had no answer for that, nothing that wouldn't sound like agreement with something he wasn't ready to agree with. He left the barn, walked to the chicken coop, let the hens out, collected eggs. 19. Good number. Ruby would be pleased. She kept track. Worried when the numbers dropped. Another small responsibility she carried because he hadn't been strong enough to carry all of them himself. When he returned to the cabin, Ruby was awake, dressed in her Sunday best, the navy dress Catherine had made 2 years ago. Still fit, barely. Ruby was growing, would need new clothes soon. Jim made a mental note, added to the list of things that cost money he barely had. Is Miss Sarah coming to church with us? Ruby asked, brushing her hair, struggling with a tangle. Jim took the brush, worked the tangle free with patient fingers. Catherine had taught him how. Those first months after Ruby was born, when his hands felt too big and clumsy for something so small and delicate as his daughter. I expect so, Jim said. Most folks go to church on Christmas Eve. I'm glad. Ruby turned to face him. It's nice having another lady. I miss having a mama to talk to about lady things. The confession hit harder than Ruby probably meant it to. Jim had known she missed Catherine, of course she did, but hearing her say it out loud, admitting there were parts of her life he couldn't fill, that hurt. I'm sorry, he said quietly, that I'm not enough. Oh, Papa, Ruby hugged him, hard. You're everything, but sometimes everything needs help. That's all. That's what Mama always said. Even strong men need help sometimes. Catherine's wisdom, speaking through their daughter, reminding him of truths he had forgotten or ignored or buried under grief too heavy to carry alone. Your mama was a smart woman. She was, and she loved you very much, she told me. The night before she died, she said you were the best man she knew. That I should remember that when you got sad. That under all the sad was all the love, and someday you'd remember how to show it again. Jim held his daughter, this small person who carried more wisdom than he had managed in 41 years. This girl who had lost her mother but hadn't let loss destroy her capacity for hope. I'm trying, he whispered, to remember. I know, Papa. I see you trying. The ride to town took an hour. The wagon creaked through snow that had drifted across the road. Drummer pulled steady, patient. The horse understood winter, understood the need to pace yourself, to save energy, to keep moving but not rush. Sarah sat in the back, wrapped in a blanket Jim had given her, Ruby beside her, the two of them talking quietly. About what, Jim couldn't hear. The wind carried their voices away, but Ruby's laughter came through, clear and bright as bells. When was the last time Ruby had laughed this much? When was the last time she'd had another woman to talk to? Mrs. Bradley occasionally. Doc Hayes when they saw her. But mostly it was just Jim, a father doing his best, but a man nonetheless, unable to answer certain questions, unable to provide certain comfort. Pine Valley appeared through the snow, a collection of wooden buildings huddled together like cattle in a storm. Main Street ran north to south, maybe 200 yards of rutted dirt, frozen solid now. Buildings on both sides, general store, blacksmith, marshal's office, saloon, bank, doctor's office. And at the north end, the church. White painted wood, steeple with a bell Jim had helped hang. 6 years ago now, right after they'd raised the building, the whole town had turned out, working together, raising walls, setting beams, creating something that would outlast them all. Community. That's what Catherine had called it. The thing that made survival possible. The thing Jim had retreated from after she died. Maybe it was time to stop retreating. The church was full. Christmas Eve brought everyone out. Farmers like Jim, who only came on Sundays, miners who worked 6 days and rested on the 7th, shopkeepers, families, old-timers who had been in Montana since before it was territory, newcomers still learning how to survive winters that could kill. Jim guided the wagon to the hitching rail, helped Ruby down, then reached up to help Sarah. She hesitated, just a moment, then placed her hand in his. Her hand was small, cold despite the gloves. She stepped down carefully. Snow had made the wagon wheel slippery. "Thank you," she said. Jim nodded, released her hand, tried not to notice how empty his felt after. Inside, the church smelled of pine boughs and candle wax. Reverend Chen had decorated with what nature provided. Pine branches on every windowsill, holly with red berries on the altar. Simple, beautiful, honest. People turned as they entered, eyes tracking, whispers starting, Mrs. Peterson leaning to Mrs. Crawford, Mr. Henry nudging Mr. Barnes, the gossip spreading like ripples in water. Walker's got that Morgan woman with him. Christmas Eve, and they're together. Been what, 2 days? Already bringing her to church like family? Jim felt his jaw tighten. Let them talk. He had done nothing wrong. Offered shelter to someone who needed it, Christian charity, nothing more. But people saw what they wanted to see, made stories from silence, filled gaps with imagination. Tom Bradley caught Jim's eye, nodded, understanding, support. Tom was good people, had been there when Catherine died, had helped dig the grave, had brought food for weeks after, never asked for anything in return. Just help because that's what neighbors did. They found seats. Third pew from the back, Jim always sat there, close to the door. Old soldier habit, always know your exits. Sarah sat beside Ruby, Ruby between them, a buffer, a reminder, a child who made everything proper and right. The service began. Reverend Chen stepped to the pulpit. He was a small man, maybe 5'6", thin, but his voice carried, strong, clear, educated. He had been a lawyer back in California. Before he felt God's call, gave up the law for the pulpit, said he'd rather judge hearts than cases. Brothers and sisters, Chen began, we gather on this holy night to remember a birth that changed the world. A child born in a stable because there was no room in the inn. His eyes swept the congregation, landed on Jim, held there for a moment, meaningful. No room in the inn, Chen repeated. The innkeeper turned them away. Not from cruelty, from fear perhaps, from worry about what others would think, from the very human tendency to keep our lives small and safe, to not complicate things with strangers' needs. Jim felt the words like arrows, memed, direct. But someone offered a stable, offered what they had. It wasn't much, just a place for animals, straw and stone. But it was shelter. It was warmth. It was room. Chen paused, let the words settle. And in that humble place, that inadequate place, that place no one thought was good enough, God chose to enter the world, to become human, to show us that holiness doesn't require perfection, just willingness, just room. Ruby's hand found Jim's, squeezed. She was listening, understanding, knowing the sermon was about them, about the choice Jim had made, about the room they had offered. Room in the heart, Chen continued. That's what Christmas asks of us. Not perfection, not wealth, not even certainty, just room, space for the stranger, opening for the unexpected, willingness to let our small, safe lives become complicated by God's presence. Sarah was crying quietly, tears running down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away, just let them fall. Ruby reached across, took Sarah's hand, held it. 3 people in a pew, holding hands, making family from fragments. The sermon continued, but Jim barely heard. His mind was too full, his heart too raw. The walls he had built so carefully were crumbling. Not breaking, not yet, but cracking, letting light seep through. After the sermon, Hymns. O come all ye faithful. Silent night. Hark the herald angels sing. After the sermon, but before the hymns, Pastor Chen made an announcement. Mrs. Morgan, might I have a word? In my study, if you please. Sarah glanced at Jim, uncertainty in her eyes. Go, Jim said quietly. Ruby and I will wait. Chen's study was small, lined with books, a desk cluttered with papers, 2 chairs, a window overlooking the churchyard where snow fell steady and silent. The pastor poured tea from a clay pot, Chinese style. The steam rose fragrant. Green tea. Simple. Honest. You carry grief, Mrs. Morgan. Not a question. An observation made with the certainty of a man who had seen much suffering. Sarah's hands trembled around the cup. We all carry grief, Reverend. True, but yours has layers. Chen sat across from her, his dark eyes kind but piercing. I see it in the way you watch Ruby, the way your hand moves to your stomach when children are mentioned, the way you flinch at the word baby. The tears came before Sarah could stop them. Hot, immediate. 3 years of holding them back and suddenly the dam broke. I was pregnant when Robert died. The words rushed out, desperate to finally be spoken. 3 months along, we were so happy. He was going to be a father. I was going to be a mother. We had names picked out. Emma if it was a girl, Daniel after his father if it was a boy. Her voice broke, but she continued. Had to continue. The wound needed air. The accident happened on a Tuesday. They brought his body home on Wednesday. Thursday, I started bleeding. By Friday, our baby was gone. I lost my husband and my child in 3 days. 3 days, Reverend. Everything I loved, everything I dreamed of, gone. Chen said nothing, just listened. Present, bearing witness. I couldn't stay in Boston. Sarah wiped her eyes. Everywhere I looked and I saw what should have been. The nursery Robert had painted yellow, the cradle his father had built, the tiny clothes I'd started sewing. I gave it all away, sold everything, came west to run from the memories. But you cannot outrun grief, Chen said gently. It rides with you. I know that now, but then I thought distance would help. Thought if I went somewhere Robert had never been, somewhere our child would never have played, the pain might ease. But it followed me. Every child I see, every mother with a baby, every empty room, it all reminds me of what I lost. And now you find yourself in a home with a child who needs a mother. Sarah nodded, fresh tears flowing. When I knocked on Mr. Mackenzie's door, I told myself I just needed shelter. A few days, nothing more. But the truth? She looked at Chen, raw, honest, broken open. The truth is I'm desperate for family, for purpose, for a reason to wake up that isn't just surviving another day. Ruby drew you 6 months before you arrived. I know, she showed me. It terrifies me. Why? Because what if this is real? What if God actually sent me here? What if I'm meant to be part of their family? And then what if I lose them too? Her voice rose, panicked. I can't survive losing another child, Reverend. I can't. It would destroy what's left of me. Chen set down his tea, leaned forward. His voice was firm but gentle. Mrs. Morgan, you have already lost a child. That pain is real. It will always be real. But pain is not a reason to stop living. It is the price we pay for love. And love, even love that ends in loss, is worth the price, always. But what if there are no guarantees? Mr. Mackenzie could lose Ruby. You could lose both of them. Or they could lose you. Death comes for us all eventually. But between now and then we have life. We have connection. We have the chance to love and be loved. To give a child the mother she prays for. To give a broken man a reason to heal. To give yourself a family, even if it's temporary. Even if it hurts. Even if it ends. It is worth it. Sarah sat in silence. The words settling, true, terrifying, undeniable. I'm so afraid, she whispered. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it. You have already shown great courage. You knocked on a stranger's door. You stayed when you could have fled. You are already choosing to love again. That takes more strength than most people possess. Sarah nodded slowly. The tea had gone cold, but she didn't notice. What do I do now? You stay, you help, you let yourself care. And when the fear comes, and it will come, you remember that love is worth the risk. Always. They sat together in comfortable silence. Outside the window, the snow continued to fall, covering the churchyard, covering the graves, making everything white and new. When Sarah finally returned to the sanctuary, her eyes were red but clear. Jim looked at her with concern. She gave him a small smile. Reassuring, I'm all right. Ruby took her hand, held it tight, and for the first time since losing her baby, Sarah let herself imagine what it would feel like to be a mother again. Then the hymns began. Sarah sang. Her voice was trained, proper, Boston educated. It rose above the congregation, clear and true, drawing others up with it, making the whole church sound better. Jim didn't sing, never did. His voice was rough, unused. But he listened. Let the music wash over him. Let it remind him of Christmases past, when Catherine sang, when Ruby was small enough to hold during service, when hope felt real and loss felt distant. The service ended, people filed out, shaking Chen's hand, wishing each other Merry Christmas, making plans for tomorrow's dinners, extending invitations. Jim held back. Let the crowd thin. He didn't want to run the gauntlet of questions and looks and barely concealed judgment. But Margaret Dawson found him anyway. She was 58, widow of the bank president, wealthy by Pine Valley standards, owned a large house on Main Street, had been trying to catch Jim's attention for 2 years. Mr. Mackenzie, her voice was honey over ice, sweet on the surface, cold underneath. How lovely to see you, and with guests. Mrs. Dawson, Jim touched his hat brim. Polite, nothing more. I don't believe I've met your companion. Margaret's eyes on Sarah were assessing, measuring, finding her wanting. This is Mrs. Sarah Morgan, Jim said. She's staying at my property temporarily. How charitable of you. Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. Though I do hope tongues don't wag, a man and woman, unmarried, under the same roof, even with a child present, people do talk. Let them talk, Jim said, voice flat, hard. I'm doing what's right, nothing more. Of course, Margaret touched his arm, possessive, claiming. I simply worry about your reputation. And dear Ruby's? Perhaps Mrs. Morgan would be more comfortable at my home. I have plenty of room, a proper chaperone situation. Before Jim could answer, Sarah spoke. That's very kind, Mrs. Dawson, but I'm quite comfortable where I am. Mr. Mackenzie has been nothing but a gentleman. Ruby is a delightful chaperone, and I have no intention of causing problems. The steel in Sarah's voice surprised Jim. This wasn't the desperate woman who had knocked on his door yesterday. This was someone else. Someone with spine, with pride, with the ability to stand her ground. Margaret's smile tightened. Well, if you're certain, I am. Then I wish you a Merry Christmas. Margaret turned to Jim. And you, Mr. Mackenzie, do think about my offer to merge our properties. It would be advantageous for both of us. And for Ruby, a child needs stability, a mother figure. I could provide that. She left before Jim could refuse again, swept out in a cloud of expensive perfume and barely concealed anger. She wants to marry you, Sarah said quietly. I know. You're not interested. I'm not. Sarah looked at him, those blue eyes searching. Because you still love your wife? Or because you don't love Mrs. Dawson? Jim considered the question, the honest answer. Both, he finally said. I'll always love Catherine. But even if I didn't, Margaret and I wouldn't suit. She wants convenience, security, a merger. I want... He stopped, not sure how to finish. What do you want? Sarah asked. I don't know anymore. I wanted Catherine. Wanted the life we planned. She's gone. The life's gone. I haven't figured out what comes next. That's honest. It's all I have left. Honesty and work and Ruby. Everything else is just surviving. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then, surviving is the first step. Living comes after, when you're ready. Before Jim could respond, Ruby appeared, pulling at his sleeve. Papa, that man is staring at us. Jim looked where Ruby pointed. Clayton Harker stood by the church door, watching them. His face was unreadable, but his presence was a message, clear as words. I see you, I know what you have, and I want it. Jim met Harker's stare, didn't look away. Wouldn't give the man the satisfaction. After a long moment, Harker smiled, tipped his hat, then left, his two men following. Buck Morrison and Jake Sullivan, killers dressed as ranch hands. Everyone knew it. No one could prove it. Who is that man? Sarah asked. Trouble, Jim said. His name's Clayton Harker. Owns most of the county. Wants to own all of it. Including your land? Especially my land. Why especially? Jim looked at Ruby, then back at Sarah. I'll tell you later. Not here. Not now. Sarah nodded, understanding, trusting. They left the church, climbed into the wagon, started the long ride home through snow that was falling again, heavier now, the kind of snow that could bury the world by morning. Ruby fell asleep in the back, wrapped in blankets, exhausted from excitement and late night. Sarah sat beside Jim now. He had offered her the front seat, warmer, more protected from wind. She had accepted. They rode in silence for a while. Just the sound of drummers' hooves, the creak of the wagon, the whisper of falling snow. Tell me about her, Sarah finally said. Your wife, Catherine. Jim was quiet so long Sarah probably thought he wouldn't answer. She was strong, he finally said. People think strong means hard. Doesn't cry, doesn't bend. But Catherine was strong like water. She could flow around obstacles, find the path, wear down stone with patience. She sounds remarkable. She was. Too good for me. I told her that when I proposed. She laughed, said good thing she wasn't asking my opinion. Sarah smiled. I would have liked her. She would have liked you too. Would have been first to offer you shelter, first to make you feel welcome. She had that gift, making people feel seen. You have that gift too, Sarah said quietly. You just don't know it. Jim glanced at her, surprised. You made me feel seen yesterday, Sarah continued, when you opened your door, when you offered your barn. You saw me, not just a problem, not just an inconvenience. You saw a person who needed help, and you helped. Wasn't much. It was everything. The words hung in the cold air. True, uncomfortable, undeniable. They rode the rest of the way in silence. But it was different now. Comfortable. The silence of two people who had begun to understand each other. When they reached the ranch, Jim helped Sarah down, his hands on her waist, brief, proper, but something passed between them. Recognition, possibility, danger. Jim pulled away, took Ruby, carried his sleeping daughter to the cabin. Behind him, Sarah walked to the barn, her lamp lit moments later, warm glow in the darkness. Jim put Ruby to bed, stood at the window, watched Sarah's light, wondered what he was doing, what he was risking, what he was inviting into his carefully controlled life. Whatever it was too late to stop now. Christmas morning, Jim woke to Ruby's scream. He was out of bed before his mind caught up. Rifle in hand, heart hammering, every nerve screaming danger. Ruby stood in the barn doorway, staring, hand over her mouth. Jim reached her in seconds, saw what she saw. The message was painted on the barn wall. Black paint, crude letters, impossible to miss. 30 days, Mackenzie. Then this land is mine. Harker. Below the words, a rough map. Jim's property, the boundaries marked. And in the southeast corner, a red circle. One word inside it. Silver. Jim's blood ran cold. Not from temperature, from understanding. Silver. There was silver under his land. That's why Harker wanted it. Not for the grass, not for the water, for what lay beneath. How long had Harker known? How had he found out? And more importantly, what would he do to get it? Papa? Ruby's voice was small, frightened. What does it mean? Jim knelt beside his daughter, hands on her shoulders, looking into her eyes, Catherine's eyes. It means a bad man wants something that doesn't belong to him, but it's not going to happen. This is our land, legal, paid for, no one's taking it. But he said 30 days. He can say whatever he wants, doesn't make it true. But Jim's stomach was tight, his mind racing. 30 days, that was specific. That meant Harker had a plan, legal or otherwise, something that would force Jim out or force Jim to fight. Neither option was good. Sarah appeared from her room, wrapped in a shawl, hair loose around her shoulders. She saw the message, saw Ruby's fear, came immediately to them. "Ruby, sweetheart, let's go inside. I'll make breakfast. Your papa needs to think." Ruby looked at Jim. He nodded. "Go. Be safe. Let me handle this." Sarah took Ruby's hand, led her away, but she looked back once, met Jim's eyes. Message clear. "I'm here. Whatever you need, I'm here." Jim studied the message. The paint was still wet, done sometime in the night, while they slept. While Jim was 50 yards away with his rifle and didn't hear a thing. Professional, quiet, dangerous. Harker's men had been here, on his property, near his daughter, near Sarah. That changed things, made this personal in a way money never could. Jim pulled the map down, folded it, put it in his pocket, then took a bucket of snow, scrubbed at the paint. It smeared but didn't come off completely, would need proper cleaning later. But the message was clear enough. 30 days. He went to the cabin. Sarah had breakfast going, oatmeal and dried apples, coffee strong enough to strip paint. Ruby sat at the table. Quiet. Too quiet. "I need to go to town," Jim said. "Talk to Marshal Wade. See what legal options we have." "I'll come with you," Sarah said. "No need." "Yes, need. Ruby shouldn't be alone. And I might be useful. I know something about property law. My father was a lawyer before he died." Jim studied her. This woman who kept revealing new depths, new skills, new strengths. "All right, Ruby, you'll come too. I'm not leaving you here alone." They hitched the wagon again. Drummer was tired but willing. The horse had heart, more than most humans. The ride to town was tense. Jim kept checking behind them, watching the tree line, hand never far from his rifle. Sarah noticed. "You think they'll try something?" "Don't know, but Harker's not a man who makes empty threats." "What will the marshal do?" "Thomas is a good man, but he's one man. Harker owns half the county, owns the judge, probably owns half the jury pool if it came to that. So the law won't help. Law helps the powerful. Always has." "Then what will you do?" Jim didn't answer, because the answer scared him. The answer was the same answer men had been giving since Cain killed Abel. Fight. Pine Valley was quiet. Christmas morning, most people at home with family. The marshal's office was open, though. Wade didn't take holidays, said crime didn't either. Thomas Wade sat behind his desk when they entered. 50 years old, gray hair, scar from the war. One of the few men Jim trusted completely. Wade looked up, saw Jim's face, stood immediately. "What happened?" Jim pulled out the map, dropped it on the desk. "Harker left this on my barn, along with a message. 30 days to get off my land or he takes it." Wade unfolded the map, studied it. His face went hard. "Silver?" "Apparently." "Son of a bitch." Wade dropped into his chair, rubbed his face. "He filed papers yesterday. Christmas Eve. Judge Whitmore approved them. Claims he has a deed from 1871. Says your deed from 77 is invalid." "That's impossible. I bought from Tom Harrison. He had clear title from 72. "I know, but Harker has documentation. Looks official. Has seals and signatures and everything. It's forged." "Probably, but proving that will take time. Months maybe. And you've got 30 days. Jim felt the walls closing in. "So what do I do?" Wade was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. "As your friend, Jim, I'm telling you to leave. Take Ruby, take Mrs. Morgan, go to Wyoming or Dakota, start fresh. Because if you stay, Harker will find a way to force you out. And his way will involve blood. I'm not leaving. Catherine's buried there. That's my land, my home. Then you need to be ready to fight. And I mean really fight. Harker's got Buck Morrison and Jake Sullivan on his payroll. You know what they are." Jim knew. Morrison had 7 kills, Sullivan 5. All ruled self-defense or justified. All convenient for whoever was paying them. "I can fight. Against 2 professional killers? Jim, you're good. Hell, you're one of the best I've seen. But you're also a father. If you die, what happens to Ruby?" The question landed like a blow because it was the question, the only question that mattered. If he fought and lost, Ruby was orphaned, would go to whoever the court appointed. Probably someone Harker had already arranged. Probably Margaret Dawson, who would raise Ruby as her own and sign over Jim's land in exchange. If he ran, Ruby was safe, but landless, homeless, starting over with nothing, no good options, just bait and worse. Sarah spoke for the first time. What if Mr. Mackenzie challenged the deed, formally, through proper channels? Wade looked at her. And you are? Sarah Morgan. I'm staying at Mr. Mackenzie's property temporarily. My father was a lawyer in Boston. I know something of property law. Then you know challenging a deed in territorial court can take months. Yes, but it establishes legal standing, makes Mr. Mackenzie the rightful occupant until resolved. Harker can't just force him out, would be illegal seizure. Harker doesn't care about illegal. But you do, Marshall. And so does Reverend Chen, and so does Tom Bradley and everyone else who believes in law. If Harker acts illegally, he loses credibility, loses support. That matters, even to powerful men. Wade studied her, reassessing. You're smarter than you look, Mrs. Morgan. I've had to be. Wade turned back to Jim. She's right. It's a delaying tactic. But it might work. Give us time to investigate, to find proof of forgery, to build a real case. How long? 3 months, maybe 4. I have 30 days. We file the challenge tomorrow. That stops the clock, puts everything in legal limbo until the court decides. Jim felt a small measure of relief. Not much, but some. A plan, a path, a chance. Do it, he said. Wade nodded. I'll draw up the papers tonight. You sign them tomorrow. I'll file with the territorial office in Helena. Wire them to expedite. Thank you, Thomas. Don't thank me yet. This buys time, doesn't solve the problem. Harker's not going to wait for courts. He'll push, he'll pressure. He'll find ways to make your life hell until you give up or make a mistake. I don't give up, and I don't make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, Jim. Everyone. They left the office. The sun was high now. Bright, cold. The kind of Christmas Day children dreamed of. White, perfect, full of possibility. But for Jim, it felt like the beginning of a war. On the ride home, Ruby slept again, exhausted by fear and confusion. Jim let her sleep, wished he could sleep, escape for a few hours, but his mind wouldn't stop. 30 days, Silver, Harker, Morrison, Sullivan, legal battles, survival, protection, Ruby, always Ruby. Everything came back to her. His responsibility, his purpose, his reason for breathing. You're quiet, Sarah said, thinking. About? How to win a war I didn't want to fight. You're not alone, Jim looked at her. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're a good man, a good father. I know you offered me shelter when no one else would. I know you're fighting for what's right. That's enough. This isn't your fight. Maybe not, but I'm choosing to stand with you anyway, because that's what people do. They stand together, or they fall alone. Jim had no answer for that. Nothing that wouldn't sound like agreement with something he wasn't ready to agree with. They rode home in silence, approaching the ranch as the sun started to set. The cabin looked small against the vast Montana sky. Fragile. One structure against wilderness and winter and men who wanted to destroy it. But it was home. His home. Ruby's home. Catherine's grave. Worth fighting for. Worth dying for if it came to that. Jim just hoped it wouldn't. For Ruby's sake more than his own. Inside, Sarah made dinner. Leftover stew from yesterday. Bread she had somehow baked in the barnroom's small oven. It was good, solid, filling. Ruby picked at her food, too worried to eat. Tell me a story, Papa, she said, about when you were young, before the war. Jim set down his spoon, looked at his daughter, saw what she needed. Distraction, normalcy, proof that life continued despite threats and fear. My father had a horse, Jim began. Big chestnut gelding named Red. Terrible name for a horse, but my father wasn't creative. Red was the smartest horse I've ever known. Could open gates, could untie knots. Once he figured out how to open the grain bin, ate so much he couldn't move for 2 days. Ruby smiled, small but real. Did he get in trouble? My father was mad. I was supposed to be watching Red, but I was fishing instead. Came home to find Red lying on his side, bloated, looking miserable. My father made me sit with Red all night, make sure he didn't die from his own stupidity. Did he die? No, but I learned my lesson. Responsibility means being there even when it's boring, even when you'd rather be somewhere else. Sarah was watching him, understanding what he was really saying. To Ruby, to himself. Responsibility means staying, fighting, not running even when running would be easier. After dinner, after Ruby went to bed, Jim sat by the fire. Sarah came from the barn, knocked softly. "Come in," Jim said. She entered, closed the door against the cold, stood awkwardly, not sure if she was welcome in the evening, in his space, in the quiet after his daughter slept. "Sit," Jim said, gesturing to the chair across from his. She sat, folded her hands, waited. "Thank you," Jim said, "for today, for your help with Wade, for knowing what to say when I didn't. I did what little I could. It wasn't little. It might save everything." Sarah looked at the fire, flames reflecting in her eyes. "My husband died owing money, gambling debts. I didn't know until after. Creditors came, took everything, house, furniture, everything. I learned about property law the hard way. Learned that knowledge is the only thing no one can take from you. I'm sorry about your husband, about everything." "Me too, but sorry doesn't change anything. Only action does. So I act, I learn, I survive. Same as you." They sat in comfortable silence, fire crackling, wind outside, the sounds of night settling over a world that felt increasingly dangerous. "Why are you really here?" Jim finally asked. "The real reason." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Because I was tired of running," she finally said. "Tired of being alone. Tired of surviving without living. When I knocked on your door, I was at the end. No money, no options, no hope. You gave me hope. You and Ruby. A glimpse of what family looks like even after loss. I want that. Need that. Even if it's borrowed. Even if it's temporary. It doesn't have to be temporary." The words were out before Jim could stop them, hanging in the air, impossible to take back. Sarah looked at him, really looked, seeing the man beneath the grief, beneath the walls, beneath the fear. "Are you sure about that?" Jim wasn't sure. Wasn't sure of anything anymore. But he was tired too. Tired of being alone. Tired of watching Ruby grow up without feminine influence. Tired of eating silent dinners and staring at empty chairs and pretending he was fine. "No," he admitted. "I'm not sure, but I'm willing to try it if you are." Sarah smiled, soft, fragile, real. "I'm willing." They sat together until the fire burned low, until the cold crept in, until Sarah finally stood, said goodnight, returned to her barn room. Jim sat alone for a while longer, thinking about choices, about risks, about the difference between surviving and living. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Harker wouldn't wait. The 30 days would tick by. Pressure would mount. Violence would come. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Jim felt something that wasn't just grief. Hope. Dangerous and fragile and probably foolish. But hope nonetheless. He banked the fire, checked the door, looked out the window at Sarah's light still burning in the barn, then went to bed, rifle beside him, ready for whatever tomorrow brought. Christmas morning arrived with deceptive peace. Ruby woke before dawn. The cabin was cold. Fire burned down to embers. Papa's door was closed. He was still sleeping. Rare for him. He always rose before the sun. But yesterday had been hard. The ride to town, the threats, the worry. Papa had sat up late with Miss Sarah. Ruby had heard their voices, low, serious, planning. She crept downstairs, careful not to wake him. He needed rest. The fire needed tending. Ruby was 9 years old enough to stoke a fire, old enough to be useful. She knelt by the hearth, reached for the kindling box beside it. The wooden box Papa kept filled with small sticks and bark, good for starting fires. Her hand touched paper. Not wood, paper, thick paper, folded. Curious, Ruby pulled it out, unfolded it carefully. A map! She recognized it immediately. Their land. The boundaries Papa had taught her, the north pasture where the cattle grazed in summer, the creek that ran diagonal, the stand of pine trees on the west side, the barn, the cabin, all drawn in careful black ink. But someone had added more. Red marks, measurements. And in the southeast corner, where the land sloped down toward the old stream bed, a large circle drawn in red ink. Inside the circle, one word in bold letters, silver. Ruby's stomach dropped. Her hands started shaking. Silver. She knew what that meant. Value, money. Men fought over silver, killed over it. She'd heard stories in town about mining camps, about claim jumpers, about violence. Is this why the bad man wants our land? She heard movement upstairs, Papa's boots on the floor. He was waking. Ruby quickly refolded the map, her heart pounding. Should she tell him? Would it make him more worried? Or would knowing help him plan? She shoved the map in her dress pocket, tried to look normal, started arranging kindling for the fire. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Papa came downstairs, dressed but moving slow, tired. Morning, little bird. You're up early. Couldn't sleep, thought I'd start the fire. He helped her, striking the flint, getting the kindling to catch. The flames grew, pushing back the cold. Papa? Yes? If someone wanted our land real bad, would you fight for it? Jim looked at his daughter, really looked. Something in her voice, in the way she held herself, too stiff, too careful. Why do you ask? Just wondering. Ruby, tell me true. What's wrong? Before she could answer, they both heard it. Horses, outside, multiple horses, moving toward the barn in the pre-dawn darkness. Jim grabbed his rifle, moved to the window. 3 riders, dark shapes against snow that glowed blue in starlight. Stay here, he ordered. Move toward the door. Papa, wait! But he was already outside. Ruby watched through the window, saw the riders at the barn, saw them dismount, saw one of them painting something on the barn wall. Large letters, black paint. They worked fast, then mounted, rode away into the darkness. Papa stood there, looking at what they'd left. Even from the cabin, Ruby could see his shoulders go rigid, tense. He came back inside. His face was white, then red, then hard as Montana granite. Get dressed, warm clothes. We're going to town. Papa, what did they write? Nothing for you to worry about. Papa, he looked at her, saw she wasn't going to let it go, sighed. A threat? Harker's telling me I have 30 days to leave or he'll take the land. Ruby reached into her pocket, pulled out the map, hands still shaking, held it out to him. I think I know why. Jim took the map, unfolded it, stared. His face went from confusion to understanding to rage in 3 seconds. Where did you find this? In the kindling box, this morning. I think someone put it there. Someone who wanted us to know. Or someone who wanted Harker to think I knew. To justify what he's planning. Jim studied the map, the red circle, the word silver. How long have you been carrying this? Just since I found it, I was going to tell you. Then the men came, then she gestured toward the barn. Jim knelt down, eye level with his daughter, put his hands on her shoulders. Ruby, listen to me. This is very important. Did anyone see you find this map? No, just me. I was alone. Papa, what does silver mean? Jim's jaw tightened. It means we're in more danger than I thought. It means Harker doesn't just want our land. He wants what's under it. Is there really silver here? I don't know, maybe. This is old mining country. Could be silver, could be copper, could be nothing, and this is just a lie to justify his claim. But either way, he believes it's here, and he'll do anything to get it. Ruby's voice went small, scared. Are we going to lose our home? Jim pulled her close, held her tight. No, we're not going to lose our home. I promise you. This is our land. Mama's buried here. You were born here. No man is going to take that from us. I don't care how rich he is. I don't care how many guns he has. This is ours. Ruby held on to her father, wanting to believe him, hoping he was right. But the map in his hand felt like a death sentence. Outside, dawn was breaking. The barn wall was visible now. The message clear. 30 days, Mackenzie. Then this land is mine. Harker. The war had begun. Tiep tuk tim doane. Jim woke to Ruby's scream. He was out of bed before his mind caught up. Rifle in hand, heart hammering, every nerve screaming danger. Ruby stood in the barn doorway, staring, hand over her mouth. Jim reached her in seconds, saw what she saw. The message was painted on the barn wall, black paint, crude letters, impossible to miss. 30 days, Mackenzie. Then this land is mine, Harker. Below the words, a rough map, Jim's property, the boundaries marked, and in the southeast corner, a red circle, one word inside it, silver. Jim's blood ran cold, not from temperature, from understanding. Silver. There was silver under his land. Exoa Tuanbo Duan Tren, to Jim woke, to Ruby screamed, and there was silver under his land. Daduk Te They Boy seen 6.4 Tren Team Duan Sao. That's why Harker wanted it, not for the grass, not for the water, for what lay beneath. How long had Harker known? How had he found out? And more importantly, what would he do to get it? Papa? Ruby's voice was small, frightened. What does it mean? Jim knelt beside his daughter, hands on her shoulders, looking into her eyes, Catherine's eyes. It means a bad man wants something that doesn't belong to him. But it's not going to happen. This is our land, legal, paid for, no one's taken it. But he said 30 days. He can say whatever he wants. Doesn't it make it true? Sarah appeared from her room, wrapped in a shawl, hair loose around her shoulders. She took one look at Jim's face, at Ruby's fear, at the map in Jim's hand. What happened? Jim showed her the map, then pointed at the barn wall visible through the door. Sarah read the message. Her face went pale, then hard. He's escalating. Yes, and now he knows we know about the silver, or thinks we do. Either way, he'll assume we're more desperate, more likely to fight, more dangerous. Then we need to move faster. File those papers with Marshal Wade today. Get legal protection before Harker makes his next move. Ruby, Jim said, kneeling again, meeting his daughter's eyes, I need you to stay close today. Don't go anywhere alone, not to the barn, not to the creek, nowhere. Do you understand? Because of the bad man? Because I need to know you're safe. Can you do that for me? Ruby nodded, serious, understanding the gravity. Good girl. The third night after Christmas, Ruby coughed. Just once. Soft. Almost nothing. The kind of cough that could mean anything or nothing at all. Jim heard it from his bed, listened in the darkness, waiting for another. It didn't come. Ruby's breathing stayed even, deep, the breathing of sleep. He told himself it was nothing. Dry air from the fire, a bit of dust, nothing. But sleep didn't come back. He lay there staring at the ceiling, listening, waiting, remembering another cough. 3 years ago, Catherine, starting small, growing, becoming fever, becoming death. No, don't think that. Not every cough is death. But in Montana territory in winter, sickness was always dangerous. The nearest doctor was 8 miles away. Roads could become impassable in hours. A simple cold could turn deadly before help arrived. Jim rose before dawn, as always, checked on Ruby. She was warm, too warm, not fever yet, but warmer than she should be. He touched her forehead. She stirred, opened her eyes. Papa, how do you feel, little bird? Ruby thought about it, the way children do, taking inventory of their bodies, trying to understand what's normal and what's not. Tired, she finally said, and cold, but I'm under blankets, so that doesn't make sense. Cold while warm. That was the start. Jim knew that start, had seen it before. Stay in bed today, he said, keeping his voice calm, normal. Rest, I'll bring you breakfast. But I need to do chores. I'll do your chores, you rest. Ruby nodded, snuggled deeper into her quilts. Jim tucked them around her, tight, creating a warm cocoon. Outside, the morning was brutal. 30 below, the coldest yet. Jim's breath froze before it left his mouth. The snow squeaked under his boots, high-pitched, the sound of deep cold. He did the chores quickly. Fed animals, broke ice, checked fences. The whole time his mind was on Ruby, calculating, planning. If she got worse, if fever came, what would he do? Get her to Doc Hayes. That was the only option. 8 miles in this cold, with a sick child. It could kill her, but staying here with no medical help could also kill her. No good options, just bad and worse. Again, Sarah emerged from the barn as he finished. She looked at his face, saw something there. What's wrong? Ruby's coming down with something. Probably nothing. But he didn't finish. Didn't need to. Sarah understood what but meant in Montana winter. What can I do? Make willow bark tea. We've got dried bark in the cabin, and keep water boiling. We'll need steam if her chest gets tight. Sarah nodded, moved immediately toward the cabin. No questions, no hesitation, just action. Jim finished in the barn, went to the cabin. Sarah already had water heating, was measuring willow bark. Her movements were efficient, confident, like she'd done this before. You've nursed sick people, Jim observed. My mother, before she died, lung fever. I was 16, spent 6 weeks keeping her alive. Didn't work in the end, but I learned. I'm sorry. We've all lost people. That's not what matters. What matters is what we learned from it, whether we can use that loss to help others. Practical, direct, no self-pity, just facts and forward motion. Jim liked that, needed that. Someone who didn't collapse when things got hard. Someone who stood firm. Ruby slept most of the morning, woke for water and tea, complained it tasted bitter. Drank it anyway when Sarah explained it would help. By afternoon, the cough was worse, deeper, rattling in her chest. Ruby's cheeks were flushed, her eyes too bright. Jim felt panic starting, creeping up his spine, tightening his chest, making it hard to breathe. Not again. Please, God, not again. Sarah made soup, thin broth with bits of potato and carrot, easy to digest, warm, nourishing. Ruby managed half a cup before her stomach rebelled. By evening, Ruby was burning up. Jim touched her forehead and yanked his hand back. The heat coming off his daughter was terrifying. He grabbed the thermometer, the mercury tube he'd bought after Catherine died, swearing he'd never be caught unprepared again. He slipped it under Ruby's tongue, waited, tried to keep breathing, tried not to remember. 3 minutes. He removed it, held it to the lamplight. 104 degrees, dangerous, potentially fatal, especially for a child. We need to cool her down, Sarah said. She was already moving, getting clean cloths, a basin of cool water. Now. Jim stood frozen. His hands wouldn't move. His feet wouldn't move. His mind was somewhere else. Somewhen else. 3 years ago. Same fever, same heat, same fear. Catherine thrashing in bed, burning up, him helpless, unable to stop it, unable to save her, just watching, holding her hand, promising things he couldn't deliver. James, Sarah's voice, sharp, cutting through memory. James, I need you here, now. Ruby needs you. He blinked, came back, looked at Sarah. She was holding cloths, waiting. But her eyes were hard, demanding, pulling him back to the present. Tell me what to do, he managed. Get more water, cold as you can. We need to bring this fever down before it causes damage. Jim moved, forced his body to obey. Grabbed buckets, went outside, scooped snow, pure, clean, cold. Brought it in, melted some, left some frozen. Sarah was already working. She'd stripped Ruby down to her underclothes, was applying cool cloths to forehead, neck, wrists, the pulse points, places where blood ran close to the surface. Ruby whimpered, too hot to shiver, but her body wanted to, confused by the conflicting signals. I know, sweetheart, Sarah murmured. I know it feels bad, but we have to cool you down. Just hold on. Be brave like your papa. Jim brought the water. Sarah soaked more cloths, changed them frequently as they warmed. Over and over. Patient, methodical, tireless. Hours passed. The fever climbed higher. 105. Ruby started to shake, not from cold, from fever, her body at war with itself. Jim held her hand, useless, unable to do anything but be there, be present, be the father who couldn't save his daughter. Talk to her, Sarah said. Let her hear your voice. Keep her anchored. I don't know what to say. Tell her about Catherine. Tell her she comes from strong women, that she can fight this. Jim swallowed. His throat was tight, but he forced words out. Your mama was strong, Ruby. Strongest woman I ever knew. You have her strength, her will. You can fight this, you hear me? You fight. Ruby's eyes fluttered. unfocused, seeing things that weren't there, fever dreams, hallucinations. Mama? Ruby's voice was small, confused. Mama, where are you? Jim's chest cracked open. I'm here, baby. Papa's here. No, not Papa. I want Mama. Where's Mama? The words were knives, each one cutting deeper, because he couldn't give her what she wanted, couldn't bring Catherine back, couldn't fix this. Sarah moved closer, smoothed Ruby's hair. Her voice was gentle, soothing. Mama's watching, sweetheart. From heaven. She's so proud of you, so proud of how brave you are. Can she see me? Ruby's eyes tried to focus on Sarah. Failed. Can Mama see me? Yes, she sees you, and she loves you so much. Ruby relaxed slightly, some tension leaving her small body. Comforted by the light or the truth, hard to say which, maybe both. Sarah kept working. Cool claws, water, willow bark tea when Ruby could swallow. Steady, calm, never stopping, never showing fear even though Jim could see it in the tightness around her eyes, the set of her jaw. She was afraid, but she wasn't letting fear paralyze her. Not like him. Jim stood. I should go for Doc Hayes. It's dark, 20 below, 8 miles. You'd never make it. And leaving now means Ruby's alone if she gets worse. But if I don't go, if this fever doesn't break, then we deal with it here, together. I've done this before, James, not always successfully, but I know what to do. Trust me, please. Trust. Such a small word for such a big ask. But what choice did he have? Sarah was right. Riding in darkness in this cold was suicide. And Ruby needed him here. Needed both of them. He nodded, sat back down, took his daughter's hand, held on. Midnight came. The fever climbed higher. 105.3. Ruby's breathing was rapid, shallow, her pulse too fast, her skin like a stove. Sarah stripped the blankets completely, used only the cool cloths now, trying to pull heat from Ruby's body any way she could. We need ice, Sarah said. Real ice, not just cold water. Jim grabbed a bucket, went outside. The night was black, moonless, stars like ice chips scattered across velvet. The cold hit him like a fist, stole his breath, burned his lungs. He scooped snow, packed it tight, added well water. The mixture would freeze solid in minutes, become ice, become one more tool to fight this fever. Inside, Ruby was thrashing now. Delirious, her words made no sense. Fragments, pieces of thoughts, dreams and reality mixed into incomprehensible soup. Sarah held her down gently, keeping her from hurting herself. Kept talking, low, steady, a lifeline in the chaos. Jim brought the ice mixture. Sarah wrapped it in cloth, applied it to Ruby's neck, her chest, under her arms, the major blood vessels, cooling the blood, hoping it would cool the body. Ruby screamed, the cold shocking her system. Too much sensation for a mind lost to fever. I know, Sarah crooned. I know, baby. I know it hurts, but you have to let us, have to trust us. Baby. Sarah had called Ruby baby, the endearment so natural, so right, like she'd been saying it for years instead of days. Jim watched Sarah work, saw her competence, her care, her refusal to give up. This woman who had knocked on his door 4 days ago, desperate, alone, broken, not broken now, strong now, exactly what they needed. You're good at this, Jim said, voice rough. I've had practice. Sarah changed cloths again, lost my mother, lost my baby, learned that sometimes all you can do is be present. Sometimes that's enough. Your baby? Sarah's hands stilled for just a moment, then resumed working. I told Pastor Chen about the baby I lost after church that first Sunday. He helped me understand that loving again doesn't betray what I lost. It honors it. Jim was quiet, then you never told me directly, but I knew the way you look at Ruby, the way you touched your stomach during the fever. A father sees things. I should have told you sooner. You told me when you were ready. That's all that matters. Sarah met his eyes, watching Ruby tonight, fighting for her life. It brought it all back, the helplessness, the fear, but also something else, hope, that maybe I get another chance to be a mother, even if not by blood. You already are, Jim said quietly. Ruby calls you Mama. In her fever dreams, in her prayers, in her heart. You're already her mother, have been since the day you arrived, maybe even before, when she was drawing you, praying for you. You were already hers. But it changed how Jim saw her, not just a widow, a mother who had lost her child, someone who understood loss at the deepest level, who knew what it meant to watch helpless while life slipped away. 1 a.m. The fever spiked again. 105.8. Sarah checked Ruby's breathing, put her ear to the child's chest, listened. Her face went from concerned to frightened. James, her voice was tight, controlled. We need Doc Hayes now. What's wrong? Fluid in her lungs, building fast. I can hear it, rattling, wet. If it keeps building, she'll drown in her own fluids. I don't have the tools here. No equipment, no medicine strong enough. We need a real doctor. Jim looked toward the window. The storm had returned with a vengeance. Snow falling so thick he couldn't see the barn. Wind howling like wolves. The kind of storm that killed travelers. It's 8 miles. In this, if we don't go, she dies. I'm certain of it. The words hung in the air. Final. Undeniable. Jim didn't hesitate. Couldn't hesitate. Get her ready. Bundled warm as you can. I'll prep the horses. Not the wagon. Too slow. Too heavy. It'll get stuck in the drifts. We ride. I'll take Belle. You take Drummer. Ruby rides with you. They moved with desperate efficiency. No wasted motion. No time for fear. Sarah wrapped Ruby in every blanket they owned, layer after layer, creating a cocoon. Only Ruby's face visible. The child was barely conscious, eyes glassy, skin like fire. Jim saddled Drummer. The big bay gelding sensed urgency, stood still, patient, ready. Sarah saddled Belle, the smaller mare, less powerful but steady, reliable. Outside, the cold hit like a physical blow. 35 below with wind chill, the kind of cold that turned exposed skin black in minutes, that stopped hearts, that killed. Jim mounted Drummer. Sarah lifted Ruby up. Jim took his daughter, held her against his chest, felt her heat even through all the blankets. Unnatural heat. Dangerous heat. Sarah mounted Belle, settled into the saddle. Her face was set, determined. No trace of the fear Jim knew she felt. Follow close, Jim said. Voice barely audible over the wind. Stay right behind me. If you fall behind, keep the lights of town ahead of you. Don't stop. Don't turn back. Just get to Doc Hayes. I won't fall behind. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. We're all getting there, together. Jim wanted to believe that, nodded, clicked his tongue. Drummer moved forward into the storm. The world disappeared in white. Visibility was measured in feet, maybe 10 feet, maybe less. The trail vanished under snow that had drifted chest-high on the horses. Every step was a battle. Drummer's breath came in labored clouds, his powerful shoulders bunching, driving through drifts that tried to swallow them. Jim navigated by instinct, by memory, by desperate hope. The trail to town followed the creek, even in winter, even buried. The creek was there, a line in the landscape, slightly lower ground. Follow the low ground. Don't climb. Don't drift east or west. Straight. Always straight. Behind him he could hear Belle struggling, Sarah urging the mare forward. Good. She was keeping pace. Ruby moaned, delirious, her body shaking with fever that refused to break. Hold on, little bird, Jim whispered against her hair. Just hold on. Almost there. But they weren't almost there. Maybe halfway, maybe less. Hard to tell in the whiteout. A gust of wind nearly knocked Drummer sideways. Jim leaned into it, kept his seat, kept Ruby secure, kept moving. The temperature was dropping. His face numb despite the scarf, his fingers losing feeling inside thick gloves. How long had they been riding? 20 minutes? An hour? Time became meaningless. Then Sarah's voice cut through the wind. James, stop! He turned Drummer, looked back. Belle was down, on her knees, struggling to rise. The drifts were too deep. The mare was too small. She'd given everything, but it wasn't enough. Sarah was off her horse, helping Belle up. The mare made it to her feet, but stood three-legged, favoring her left front, limping. Jim rode back, close as he could. She hurt? I don't think so, just exhausted, but she can't carry me anymore. Get on behind me. Drummer can't carry three, not in this. He can, he's strong enough. He has to be. James, get on, now, we're not leaving you. Sarah didn't argue. She grabbed Drummer's saddle, pulled herself up behind Jim, her arms wrapped around his waist, around Ruby between them, holding tight. Drummer felt the extra weight, snorted, shook his head, then dug in, found his footing, moved forward. Good horse, the best horse, heart of a lion. Belle followed, riderless, limping, but following, the herd instinct too strong to abandon. They pressed on. The cold was murderous now. Jim couldn't feel his feet. His face was wooden, frozen. He kept moving only through will, through necessity, through love. Ruby's breathing changed, shallower, irregular, rattling. Faster, Sarah said in his ear. James, we're losing her. He urged Drummer on. The horse responded, giving everything, every ounce of strength, every reserve of will. The world was white, white and cold and infinite. No landmarks, no reference, just wind and snow, and the faint depression that might be the trail. Then Jim saw it. A light, faint, yellow, distant but real. Town, the edge of town, the first houses. There, he pointed. Drummer saw it too. The horse surged forward, renewed by hope, by the promise of shelter, of warmth, of rest. They emerged from the storm like ghosts, snow-covered, ice-crusted, barely recognizable as human. Doc Hayes's house was dark. Jim rode straight to it, dismounted, nearly fell. His legs wouldn't hold him. He forced them to work, staggered to the door, pounded. Doc! Doc Hayes, open up! A light appeared inside. The door opened. Rebecca Hayes stood there in her nightgown, a shawl thrown over her shoulders. She took one look at Jim, at the bundle in his arms, at Sarah sliding off Drummer behind him. Inside, now, Rebecca! Her husband appeared, still dressing. What is it? Fever, child critical. They moved fast, professional, efficient. Jim stumbled inside, Sarah behind him. They laid Ruby on the examination table. Doc Hayes unwrapped the blankets, checked Ruby's breathing, her heartbeat, her temperature. 105.9. Fluid in the lungs. How long? All night, Sarah said. We've been fighting it for 8 hours. It won't break. Keeps climbing. Hayes moved to his medicine cabinet, pulled out bottles, needles, equipment. This is going to be close, very close. But you got her here. That's what matters. He worked with steady hands, injecting medicine, administering oxygen through a mask, listening to Ruby's lungs, draining fluid with a needle through her back. Delicate, precise, life-saving. 2 a.m., the fever started to drop. 105.4. 3 a.m., lower still. 104.1. Ruby's breathing eased. The terrible rattling sound faded. Color started returning to her cheeks. She's going to make it, Hayes said. You got her here in time. Another hour and he didn't finish, didn't need to. Jim collapsed into a chair, all strength gone, all fear finally released. He put his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. Sarah sat beside him, put her hand on his back, said nothing, just stayed. Outside, Drummer and Belle were in Hayes' small stable, fed, watered, rubbed down, resting. They'd earned it. The storm continued to rage, but inside, warmth, safety, life. Ruby was going to live, and Jim was never letting her go again. Ruby slept, real sleep now, not the unconscious thrashing of fever, but rest. Her body finally able to heal instead of just survive. Sarah stripped away the steamy sheets, opened windows slightly, let fresh cold air in, balancing warmth and ventilation, keeping Ruby comfortable but not overheated. Jim stood, stretched, his back screaming from hours bent over Ruby's bed, his eyes burning from lack of sleep. his mind numb from fear finally releasing its grip. "You should rest," Sarah said. "I'll watch her." "I'm fine." "You're not fine, you're exhausted. And if Ruby needs you later, you need to be alert." She was right. He knew she was right. But leaving felt like abandoning his post, like admitting weakness. "I'll stay with her," Sarah said softly. "I promise, if anything changes, I'll wake you immediately." Jim looked at his daughter, sleeping peacefully now, color returning to her cheeks, breathing easy. Looked at Sarah, this woman who had proven herself over and over, in ways big and small, who had earned his trust through action instead of words. "All right, Ivisa," he finally said, "but wake me in 2 hours. We'll trade." Sarah nodded. "Deal." Jim went to his room, lay down on his bed, still dressed, ready to move at any moment. Tried to sleep. Sleep came hard. His mind kept replaying the night. Ruby's fever, Sarah's competence, his own paralysis, how close they'd come to losing everything. When he finally slept, he dreamed of Catherine. She was in the barn room, sitting on the bed, looking at him with those knowing eyes. "You're allowed to live, James," she said. "Not accusation, just fact. I never asked you to die with me. But I promised. You promised to live, to love, to let Ruby see what that looks like. You've been breaking that promise every day." "I don't know how to keep it." Catherine smiled, sad, understanding. "Yes, you do. She's in the next room, saving our daughter, being what we need, what you need. Let her." Jim woke with tears on his face. Dawn was breaking, gray light through the window. He'd slept 3 hours, not 2. He went to Ruby's room. Sarah was asleep in the chair, her head tipped back against the wall. One hand still holding Ruby's, even in sleep, still keeping watch. Ruby was awake, weak but aware. Her eyes found Jim when he entered. "Papa?" He was beside her in 2 strides, touching her forehead. Cool, no fever, normal temperature, normal child. "Hey, little bird, how do you feel?" "Tired and hungry." Hungry. That was good. That was recovery. Bodies didn't want food unless they were healing. "I'll make you something. What would you like?" "Mama's soup, the kind with noodles." Jim's throat tightened. "I don't know how to make that." "Miss Sarah knows. She made it yesterday." Ruby looked at Sarah, still sleeping. "She took good care of me. Better than anyone except Mama." The words hit Jim like a hammer because they were true. Sarah had taken care of Ruby with skill and patience and love. Everything a mother would do. Everything Catherine would have done. Sarah stirred, opened her eyes, saw Ruby awake and sitting up. Relief flooded her face. "You're better," she said, voice thick with sleep and emotion. "Miss Sarah?" Ruby's voice was small, uncertain. "Thank you for staying, for helping." Sarah reached out, smoothed Ruby's hair, natural, maternal, right. "Always, sweetheart, always." And there it was, the promise, unspoken but heard. Sarah wasn't just helping temporarily. She was committing to Ruby, to this family, to whatever came next. Jim felt something shift. Inside his chest, behind his walls, the last blocks of ice starting to thaw. Ruby recovered quickly. Children do. One day near death. The next asking for breakfast and complaining about bed rest. By afternoon, she was sitting up. By evening, she wanted to get up. Sarah insisted on one more day of bed rest. Ruby grumbled, but obeyed. Jim spent the day trying to process what had happened, how close he'd come to losing Ruby, how completely he'd frozen when fear struck, how Sarah had stepped in without hesitation, without being asked, just did what needed doing. He owed her more than shelter, more than meals, more than he could express. That evening, after Ruby fell asleep, Jim found Sarah in the barn. She was brushing Drummer. The horse enjoyed the attention, leaned into the strokes. "You don't have to do that," Jim said. "I know, but I wanted to. Drummer's a good horse, deserves some attention." Jim watched her work, efficient, gentle, understanding horses the way she seemed to understand everything else, with patience and care. "Thank you," he finally said. "For last night, for Ruby, for..." He couldn't finish. There were too many things, too much gratitude for words to contain. Sarah set down the brush, turned to face him. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You saved her. I froze. I was useless. You saved her. You weren't useless. You were scared. There's a difference. I should have been stronger. James. Sarah stepped closer, close enough he could see gold flecks in her blue eyes. You're human. You lost your wife to fever. Watching Ruby get sick brought all that back. Anyone would have reacted the same way. You didn't. I didn't have to watch someone I loved die from fever. I watched my mother die from lung disease. Slow. Inevitable. Fever was quick with your wife, unexpected, traumatic, different kind of loss, different kind of fear. She was making excuses for him, trying to soften his failure, but he couldn't accept that, couldn't let himself off that easy. What if you hadn't been here? What if Ruby had gotten sick a week ago, before you came? She would have died because I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't do what needed to be done. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that stopped him cold. But I was here. That's not coincidence. Ruby prayed for me 6 months ago, drew my picture, believed I would come, and I did, exactly when you needed me. Maybe that's not random. Maybe that's something else. Providence, divine intervention, fate, call it what you will. The idea that Sarah hadn't just wandered to his door, that she'd been sent, guided, brought here for a purpose. Jim didn't know if he believed that, but he couldn't deny the timing, the way everything had aligned. Ruby's prayer, Sarah's desperation, the boarding house sale, the knock on his door, the fever, all of it connected, all of it necessary. I don't believe in coincidence anymore, Sarah continued. I believed in it once, when life was easy, but I've lost too much, suffered too much. The only way it makes sense is if there's a reason, a purpose, if the pain leads somewhere. And you think this is where it led? To my barn? To my daughter's sickbed? I think this is where we both needed to be. You needed help. I needed purpose. Ruby needed a mother figure. We all needed each other. Maybe God arranged that. Maybe it was just luck. But either way, we're here, together, making each other stronger. Jim had no counter-argument. Nothing that didn't sound like denial of obvious truth. Stay, he said, simple, direct. Not just until you find somewhere else. Sam, permanently. We need you. Ruby needs you. I need you. There it was. The admission. The vulnerability. Everything he'd been avoiding for days. Spoken plain. No decoration. Just truth. Sarah's eyes welled up. James, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I'm just asking you to stay. Be part of this family, whatever that means. However that looks, just don't leave. I won't. Sarah's voice was thick, choked. I won't leave. I promise. They stood there in the dim barn, two broken people, making promises they hoped they could keep, building something from ruins, hoping it would hold. The moment was broken by hoofbeats, multiple horses, coming fast. Jim's hand went to his rifle, leaning against the stall, always within reach, always ready. He moved to the barn door, looked out, 3 riders, coming up the path. Harker in front, Morrison and Sullivan flanking him. Jim felt ice in his gut. This wasn't a social call. Stay here, he told Sarah. Whatever happens, stay inside. James, please, just stay. He stepped outside, rifle in hand, not aimed, not yet. But ready, message clear. You're not welcome. Turn around. Harker didn't turn around. He rode right up to Jim, stopped 20 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough that Jim couldn't reach him before Morrison or Sullivan could draw. Mackenzie. Harker's voice was smooth, friendly, dangerous. Heard your daughter was sick. Came to check on her. Neighborly concern. Ruby's fine. No thanks to you. Now that's unfair. I had nothing to do with her illness. You had something to do with the stress that weakened her, the fear that kept her up at night, the worry that made her vulnerable. Harker smiled, cold, calculated. I'm simply exercising my legal rights. Not my fault if that causes inconvenience. Your legal rights are based on forgery. We both know it. Prove it. I will. Courts will decide. Courts take time. You have 3 weeks left. Then this land is mine, legal or not. Jim raised the rifle slightly, not aiming, just adjusting, making intentions clear. I'm not leaving. This is my land, my home. You want it, you'll have to take it by force. Force? Harker's eyebrows raised, mocking surprise. Who said anything about force? I'm a law-abiding citizen. I would never suggest violence. Morrison and Sullivan shifted in their saddles, hands moving closer to their guns, subtle. But Jim saw it. Your men say different. My men are here for protection. Dangerous country. Never know when you might encounter hostility. Isn't that right, Buck? Morrison grinned. Mean. All teeth and malice. Real dangerous, boss. Man could get hurt, accident-like. Nobody's fault. It was a threat, clear as words could make it, not even pretending otherwise. Jim felt rage building. Hot. Dangerous. The kind that got men killed. He forced it down, kept his voice level. Get off my property. It's not your property. Not for much longer. 3 weeks. You said it yourself. Until then it's mine. And I'm telling you to leave. Harker studied him, calculating, deciding how far to push. Finally he nodded. We'll leave for now. But Mackenzie? Time's running out. For you, for your daughter, for that pretty widow you've got staying here. Be a shame if something happened to any of them. The threat was clear, unmistakable. Not just aimed at Jim, at Ruby, at Sarah. Jim raised the rifle fully now, aimed at Harker's chest. Say that again. I dare you. Harker laughed, actually laughed. Easy now, just making conversation. No need for violence. We're civilized men. He turned his horse, Morrison and Sullivan following. They rode 20 yards. Then Harker stopped, looked back. Oh, and Mackenzie? I hear Tom Bradley's having financial trouble, behind on his mortgage. Bank's considering foreclosure. Sure would be convenient if someone bought that debt, someone who could encourage Tom to testify about certain property boundaries, how they might not be where you think they are. Just saying, friends can become enemies real quick when money's involved. He rode off, leaving the words hanging, poison in the air. Jim lowered the rifle. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage barely contained. Tom Bradley, his best friend, his only ally, Harker was going after him, using debt as leverage, trying to flip Tom or destroy him. This wasn't just about land anymore. This was war, total war. Harker would hurt anyone, destroy anything, to get what he wanted. Sarah emerged from the barn. She'd heard everything. Her face was pale but determined. He's escalating. Yes. What are you going to do? I don't know, but I can't let him hurt Tom, or Ruby, or you. Then we fight together. We find a way. Jim looked at her, this woman who had every reason to run, who could walk away right now, start over somewhere safe, somewhere without Harker and his threats. But she wasn't running. She was staying, standing with him. It could get dangerous, Jim said. Worse than it is. I know, I'm staying anyway. Why? Because someone has to. Because you can't do this alone. Because Ruby needs both of us. Because... She stopped, started again. Because this feels like home. And I don't run from home. Not anymore. Jim wanted to argue, to protect her by pushing her away. But he needed her. Ruby needed her. And maybe, just maybe, they were stronger together than apart. All right, he said. We fight. We fight. They stood together in the growing darkness. Two people against a man with money and power, and men willing to kill. Bad odds. Terrible odds, but not impossible. Not if they were smart. Not if they worked together. Jim just had to figure out how. That night, after Ruby was asleep, Jim rode to Tom Bradley's farm, 3 miles away. Close enough to be neighbors, far enough for privacy. Tom's place was bigger than Jim's. More land, better house. Tom had 4 kids. His wife Martha was from Pennsylvania. Good stock, strong woman, good mother. The Bradley house glowed with lamplight. Warm, welcoming, everything a home should be. Jim knocked. Tom answered, surprise on his face. Jim, everything all right? Ruby still recovering? Ruby's fine, it's something else. Can we talk? Tom stepped outside, closed the door behind him. What's going on? Jim told him. Everything. Harker's threats, the debt, the pressure to testify against Jim, the escalation. Tom's face went hard. That son of a bitch. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to drag you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere, Harker did. And yeah, I'm behind on my mortgage. Had 2 bad years. Cattle prices dropped. Lost 20 head to wolves. I'm struggling. But I'm not for sale. My testimony sure as hell isn't for sale. He'll make it hard on you. Let him try. I've dealt with harder men than Clayton Harker. These aren't just threats, Tom. He's serious. He'll destroy you if he can. Then he'll have to destroy me, because I'm not helping him take your land. We fought together, Jim, at Gettysburg, in hell. I stood beside you then. I'll stand beside you now. The words hit hard. Brotherhood, the kind forged in war, the kind that didn't break under pressure. Thank you, Jim said. Inadequate, but all he had. Don't thank me. Just tell me what you need. I need you to be careful. Watch your back. Harker's men aren't above making things look like accidents. I'll be careful. Martha knows how to shoot. So do the older kids. We'll keep watch. They talked strategy for an hour. What they knew, what they could prove, what legal options remained. It wasn't much, but it was something. When Jim left, he felt marginally better. Not alone anymore. Not facing this solo. That mattered. The ride home was cold, clear. Stars like ice above. Moon rising late, casting blue shadows across white snow. Montana was beautiful. Harsh, but beautiful. Worth fighting for. Worth dying for if it came to that. Jim hoped it wouldn't, but he was ready if it did. Sunday came, church day. Ruby was well enough to attend, weak but recovering. Sarah insisted she bundle up. Extra layers, scarf tight, hat pulled low. The ride to town was quiet, tense. Jim kept checking behind them, watching for Harker's men, expecting ambush. Nothing came. The road was empty, the forest silent, but Jim's nerves stayed wound tight. Ready. At church, people noticed. Whispers started immediately. Walker's widow had his daughter. That sick little girl recovered because of her. Some saying it's a miracle, others saying it's unseemly. Man and woman under one roof, not married, not proper. Town was divided, half sympathetic. Understanding Jim needed help. Approving of Sarah's care. Glad Ruby survived, the other half scandalized. Convinced impropriety was happening. Wagging tongues, making judgments. Margaret Dawson held court on the church steps, surrounded by her faction. The proper ladies, the ones who valued reputation over mercy. I'm just saying, Margaret's voice carried, meant to carry. It's inappropriate. A single man, a single woman, living in close proximity, with only a child for chaperone. What message does that send? Mrs. Peterson nodded vigorously. Exactly. In my day, such arrangements would have been scandalous. It is scandalous, Margaret agreed. Poor Mr. Mackenzie probably doesn't realize how it looks. Someone should speak to him, for his own good. Jim heard every word, meant to hear. Public shaming disguised as concern. Sarah heard too. Her hand tightened on Ruby's. Her face went carefully blank. The mask she wore when hurt, but refusing to show it. Reverend Chen appeared on the steps. His voice cut through the chatter. Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. The whispers stopped. Eyes dropped. Faces flushed. Chen continued, gentle but firm. A child was sick, near death. A woman provided care. Selflessly, with skill and devotion. A man offered shelter, protection, charity. These are Christian virtues, not scandals. Anyone who sees sin and mercy needs to examine their own heart. Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable. Then Tom Bradley spoke up. Loud, clear. I agree with Reverend. Jim's doing what's right. Sarah too. Anyone who can't see that is blind. Doc Hayes nodded. Mrs. Morgue has medical knowledge. She saved that child's life. That's fact. Not opinion. Not gossip. Fact. One by one, others spoke, supporting Jim, supporting Sarah. Not everyone, not even most, but enough to shift the balance, to make judgment harder, to create space for acceptance. Margaret's face went tight, pinched. She'd lost this round. She swept into the church, her faction following, defeated but not done. Inside, the service was tense, divided congregation, half watching Jim and Sarah with approval, half with disapproval, sides forming, lines drawn. Chen's sermon was about community, about standing together in hard times, about not letting outside forces divide what should be united. He didn't mention Harker by name. Didn't need to. Everyone knew. Harker sat in the back, smirking, enjoying the division, the chaos, the weakening of Jim's support. This was part of his strategy. Isolate Jim, make him pariah, make him desperate, alone, easier to destroy. But it wasn't working completely. Some stood firm, Tom, Doc Hayes, Chen, others, not everyone, but enough. After service, people approached, some to offer support, some to warn, some just to shake hands, show solidarity. Tom pulled Jim aside. Harker's moving faster than we thought. He bought my debt, all of it, from the bank. Now he owns my mortgage. Jim felt his stomach drop. When? Yesterday, bank informed me this morning, I've got 60 days to pay in full, or he can foreclose. How much? $800. Impossible. Tom didn't have that kind of money. Neither did Jim. Nobody in Pine Valley did except Harker himself and maybe Margaret. What are you going to do? Fight. Same as you. I'm not giving him my land or my testimony. He can burn my mortgage for all I care. I'm not budging. Brave words, but both men knew what they meant. Tom would lose his farm, his home, everything, because he refused to betray his friend. Jim felt guilt like acid. This was his fault, his fight. Tom was collateral damage. I'm sorry, Jim said. I never wanted this. I know, but it's not your fault. It's Harker's, and we're going to beat him. Somehow. How, neither man knew, but determination counted for something. Had to count for something. On the ride home, Ruby fell asleep again. Still weak, still recovering. Sarah covered her with extra blankets, held her steady as the wagon bounced. They're choosing sides, Sarah observed, watching the landscape pass. The town, some for you, some against. That's how it works. Can't please everyone. We don't need everyone, just enough, and we have enough. Tamam, Doc Hayes, Reverend Chen, good people, strong people. Harker has more money, more influence, more power. But we have something he doesn't. We have right on our side. That matters. Maybe not legally, but morally. And moral weight has power too. People know the difference between justice and law, even if they can't always act on it. Jim wanted to believe that, wanted to believe good would triumph. That right mattered more than might. But he'd seen too much. In the war, after, good people lost all the time. Right got trampled. Might made right more often than anyone wanted to admit. Still, he had to try, for Ruby, for the land, for Catherine's memory, for the life he was starting to believe he could have again. With Sarah. The thought came unbidden, unwelcome, undeniable. He was falling for her, maybe already had fallen. This woman who appeared from nowhere, who saved his daughter, who stood beside him when she had every reason to run. Too fast, too soon, too complicated, but real nonetheless. He glanced at her. She was looking ahead, profile strong against winter sky, beautiful in a quiet way. Not flashy, not demanding, just there. Solid, real, right. As if feeling his gaze, she turned, met his eyes. Something passed between them. Understanding, agreement, promise. This was happening, whether they planned it or not, whether it was wise or not. They were becoming something, building something. If they survived Harker, if they kept the land, if they made it through the next 3 weeks. Big ifs, dangerous ifs, but possible. Maybe. They rode home in comfortable silence. The kind only possible between people who were starting to truly know each other, starting to trust, starting to hope, starting to love, even if neither was ready to say it out loud. Not yet, but soon. 6 months later, June 1884, the morning sun turned the Montana grasslands to gold. Jim stood on the porch watching his wife hang laundry. Sarah, his wife. The words still felt new, precious, like something he didn't quite deserve, but had been given anyway. 6 months since that terrible winter. 6 months since everything had almost fallen apart. 6 months since it had all come together in ways he never imagined. The weeks after Ruby's fever had been brutal. Harker had escalated, just as Marshall Wade predicted. Jim had been arrested on false charges, spent 3 days in jail while Sarah rode to Helena with Tom Bradley. 100 miles through winter cold, 2 days there, 2 days back, carrying legal documents that proved Harker's deed was forged. Sarah had found the proof in Helena's territorial archives, 3 pieces of evidence that couldn't be denied. First, Harker's 1871 deed used ink that wasn't manufactured until 1875. The territorial clerk had spotted it immediately. Second, the handwriting analysis showed the signature matched Buck Morrison's hand, not the original surveyor who had supposedly signed it. Third, the seal was wrong, the wrong territorial seal for that year. Amateur forgery, obvious once you knew what to look for. Sarah had learned about document fraud from her father, had helped him on cases in Boston. She knew what questions to ask, what details to examine. The territorial officials had been impressed, had expedited their investigation because the evidence was so clear. The territorial marshal had come, investigated, found the truth. Harker had been charged with fraud, attempted land theft, bribery of a local judge. He was in prison now. 10 years. Buck Morrison was dead. Shot in self-defense when he tried to kill Jim the night Jim escaped custody. Marshall Wade had helped Jim escape specifically so Morrison would come to the ranch, away from town, away from innocent bystanders. Morrison had arrived at midnight with orders to kill Jim and make it look like an accident. But Wade and Reverend Chen had been hiding in the barn. Witnesses. When Morrison drew his gun and fired first, Jim had no choice but to defend himself. Chen testified to everything. Clear self-defense. No charges filed. It had been a trap, carefully planned, the only way to stop Morrison without a long legal battle. Wade had risked his badge to make it happen. Said some threats needed to be ended, not prosecuted. Jake Sullivan had testified against Harker to save himself. He was gone now. Vanished into the territories. Judge Whitmore had been removed from office. Disbarred, disgraced. The land was Jim's, legal, permanent, undisputed. The silver was real, a vein running through the southeast corner. Not as rich as Harker had hoped, but enough to make them comfortable, to expand the ranch, to hire help, to give Ruby everything she needed. But it wasn't the silver that made Jim wealthy. It was what he'd gained that winter. Sarah appeared in the doorway of the barn, no longer sleeping there. She'd moved into the cabin 3 months ago, into Jim's room, into his bed, into his life completely. They'd married in February. Small ceremony. Reverend Chen officiating, Ruby as flower girl, Tom and Martha Bradley as witnesses. Margaret Dawson had even come. The change in Margaret had surprised everyone. Watching Jim nearly lose Ruby had reminded her of losing her own son 15 years ago. Scarlet fever. He'd been only 8. After that, Margaret had become hard, bitter, using cruelty to protect herself from more pain. But Ruby's recovery had cracked something open in her. Reverend Chen had spent hours counseling her, helping her see that her jealousy of Sarah came from fear, not hatred. Fear that she'd never have another chance at family. Margaret had come to Jim and Sarah a week before the wedding, had apologized with tears in her eyes, said she'd been wrong, cruel, that she hoped they could forgive her. Sarah had embraced her, said forgiveness was always possible, that Montana was too small for enemies and too cold for grudges. Had apologized to Sarah, had given them a silver tea service as a wedding gift, had wished them well with genuine warmth. The town had healed, come together, united against Harker's corruption, stronger for it. "Papa, Mama, come quick!" Ruby's voice, excited, not afraid. Jim had learned to tell the difference. He went inside. Sarah behind him. Ruby sat at the kitchen table. The same three chairs, but different now. Full now, right now. Look, Ruby held up a letter. It's from the school in Helena. They accepted me for fall term. Sarah's eyes went wide. Ruby, that's wonderful. Jim felt pride swell in his chest. Ruby was brilliant. Top of her class in Pine Valley's small school. Ready for more. The academy in Helena would challenge her, prepare her, give her opportunities he and Catherine had only dreamed of. I'll miss you, Jim said. Honest. But you'll come home for Christmas and summers. And I'll write every week, Ruby promised. Tell you everything I'm learning. Sarah hugged her, not replacing Catherine, but filling a space Catherine had left empty, being what Ruby needed, what they both needed. Your mama would be so proud, Jim said, meaning both Catherine and Sarah. Ruby understood, smiled. I know, I feel her sometimes, when I'm happy, like she's happy too. After Ruby went outside to tell the chickens her news, Sarah moved to Jim, slipped her hand into his. Are you all right, she asked, with her leaving? No, Jim admitted, but I'm proud, and that matters more than comfortable. Sarah nodded, then took his other hand, placed it on her stomach. Jim froze, looked at her face, saw the answer before she spoke. I'm pregnant, 3 months. Doc Hayes confirmed it yesterday. The world stopped, tilted, rearranged itself. A baby, their baby, his and Sarah's, Ruby's sibling, Catherine's. Catherine would have been happy, would have wanted this, had told him to live, to love, to let Ruby see what family looked like. Are you happy? Sarah asked, uncertain, needing to know. Jim pulled her close, felt her heart beating against his chest, felt the impossible miracle of new life between them. I'm happy, he whispered. I'm so damn happy, I don't know what to do with it. Sarah laughed, cried, held him tight. Outside, Ruby was singing, her voice clear and bright. The first time Jim had heard her really sing since Catherine died. A hymn, Catherine's favorite. Come thou fount of every blessing. Jim and Sarah walked to the window, watched Ruby spin in circles in the sunshine. Arms out, face turned up, catching light instead of snowflakes now. Behind the cabin, Catherine's grave was covered in wildflowers. Ruby had planted them in spring, tended them, made sure her mother's resting place was beautiful. She brought us together, Sarah said quietly. Catherine, through Ruby's prayers, through timing, through everything, she brought us together. I know, Jim agreed. Took me a long time to see it, but I know. He still wore his grief, probably always would, but it sat different now, not heavy, not crushing, just part of him, like scars from the war, proof of what he'd survived, what he'd loved, what he'd lost and found again. The land stretched out before them, 320 acres, his, theirs, Ruby's inheritance, the new baby's birthright. The barn stood solid, the fences were mended, the cattle were fat, the silver brought money, but those were just things. Important, but just things. What mattered was standing beside him, playing in the yard, growing in Sarah's womb, resting under wildflowers, family. Found and lost and found again. Different, scarred, imperfect, but whole. Come on, Sarah said, taking his hand. Ruby wants to celebrate. We should make her favorite dinner. The one with noodles? The one with noodles. They walked back inside together, leaving the window open, letting the summer breeze blow through, carrying Ruby's song, carrying hope, carrying the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after. Jim paused at the doorway, looked back one more time at Catherine's grave. Thank you, he said, quiet, meant, for letting me go, for giving me permission, for Ruby, for Sarah, for all of it. Thank you. The wind stirred the wildflowers, made them dance like an answer, like a blessing. Jim smiled, turned, went inside to his family. The door closed behind him. But it wasn't an ending. It was barely even a beginning. It was just life, moving forward. The way Catherine had wanted, the way it was supposed to, full of love, full of hope. Full of room in the heart for everyone who needed it. Even stables had room, even broken men, even widows with nothing left. Room enough for healing, room enough for love, room enough for new life growing where old life had ended. Room enough, always room enough.